Hey guys, welcome back to Journey to the Truth podcast. This is week 2 of Secret Space Program Month. We're joined by Johan Fritz. If you guys don't know who he is, you're going to find out. He has an incredible testimony, incredible memory recall. It's like a talking textbook. He's loaded with knowledge and information about what's going on right now, what's going on in the programs in space, underground. It's quite fascinating. Welcome to the show, Johan. How's it going over there? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing very well. Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to briefly read through your bio. Actually, you know what? I'll put the bio in the description, and we'll let you kind of give us a background of your testimony, what you've been through, and how this all started for you.
Well, I'll start off with the succinct version, which is still kind of long, but I'll do that first, and then we'll kind of go back and drill into the details. If that's okay with you guys. Sure. So for me, the way it started off was I was screened as a kid because of my family background, because of my intuitive empathic abilities, because of my personality disposition, and certain genetic markers. All those things make up what they call a metagene. And that metagene is what enables certain people in the programs to use certain technology. It also allows them to enhance or be used in certain ways that other programs can't use you. So as a kid, they already knew I had this. From age 5 up through age 12, I was being constantly abducted, trained. I was being put through MK Ultra, which you guys, or the follow-on MK Pegasus, which ended in 95. If you guys know what that is.
Yes.
Then age 12, that's when I actually started what I would call real super soldier training. For Peter the Insider, between age 12 and 14, apparently I still carry the record as having gone through all 4 layers of that fastest. So, for whatever that's worth. And at age 14, then they started actually putting me in what they called training missions, where they actually would have us in simulated armor. We would go through and do simulated battles up through age 17, 18. And a lot of this stuff as a kid, for me, was showing up as dreams. I didn't know how to quite process that. My mom just thought I had a super hyperactive imagination. Not the case. So at age 17, I actually enlisted in what's called DEP, which is a delayed enlistment program for the U.S. military. And that's when all the abductions stopped for me. It was the minute I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And I actually went through what they called an early boot camp program at that point. They don't have that anymore, but they used to have what they call an early boot camp program. I went through that, came back, went through my senior year, and then I finished up the last remaining part of my 4 years in as after my graduation from high school. Now, during that time, when I was actually enlisted and overseas, that's when all the stuff for the programs began for me. Specifically, the tracking that they had been doing since I was a kid, it followed me all the way through the military. And at that point, when I got to Diego Garcia, that's where I was taken off planet. I was put through what they called indoc. A company called Shoreline runs the indoc process on the moon. You're put through that. And then once you go through that indoc process, they figure out where they're going to send you. Like who are they sending you to do actual work in the programs, right? My case, I qualified as a grunt, a soldier. Imagine that, right? And so at that point, I was sent to a program called Krueger, where I worked. I had 2 alters actually I know of at least that were in Krueger. And then one of those alters, the guy who I've using the moniker for here, the alias, that was my name in that particular program, which is Johan Fritz. That particular alias was transferred out at a certain point to what they called JDFC's Joint Defense Forces Command. They have a sub-command called Mars Defense Forces. And I basically was transferred there. I went through their boot camp, their weapon program. We did some missions with them. While I was doing that stuff, I was being screened by another officer for Dark Fleet, what CG calls Dark Fleet, Nakwa from Rajir. And at that point, that's when I got brought into working off planet outside the solar system. And eventually there was a decision that had to be made among all the Dark Fleet Command people, staff, where we decided, are we taking the black goo and are we putting up with slavery? And another group was already kind of being formulated off to the side, which is called the Alliance. And there's 2 segments to the Alliance. But one of these segments approached us and said, we know that you guys are talking about this idea of breaking away from Nakwa from Ajir. We could use people with your background, your intelligence background, your weapons, your ships, all that stuff. We could use that in our group if you guys are willing to help join us to help protect Terra and protect our colonies. And at that point, the guy that we call the old man, he called all of his senior staff, like me. I was aide de camp at this point.
Really quick, when you say old man, is that who Corey refers to as Sigmund? Is this the same guy?
So the originator of Sigmund is a clone.
Okay.
Let's be clear. And we're going to get to that in a little bit when we start talking about some of these other programs, okay?
Sure.
But Sigmund was a clone that they use for security purposes. So people like the old man would upload Sigmund with a certain level of information and then have him go deliver it.
Okay.
That way, if somebody took him out, it doesn't take out the old man. And by the way, he knows when he dies, because when he rehomes, he has all that knowledge still here.
Yeah, so there's a lot you're skimming through that people don't understand. So when you get through it, I'd like to go back and break down, like, as far as Diego Garcia, Krueger, even whenever you refer to Terrans or Terra, like that, people don't know that's what they refer to. That's what they refer to as Earth.
Yeah, people off world call Earth Terra.
Exactly.
Pardon me. I've been trying to address some of these issues around how do we go from having been in a fractured state to now in a healed state. And as we're talking about some of the subjects around the SSP, this subject keeps coming up. So Ted and I keep addressing it because people want to know. They're like, well, how do I get myself into a better, healthier spiritual state, in a better, healthier emotional, mental state, right?
Sure.
So that's obviously a concern for those of us that have been in. It's something that we all have to do, but more specifically, people who've been in the programs have to do that. So thank you for letting me do that. And there you go.
Yeah. No, that's cool that you're doing that, actually, because that's actually the most important thing, because what good are we if we're not healed?
Correct.
So that's thank you. I'm actually really looking forward to hearing that. Maybe we could touch on some of that later in this interview also, but I don't know exactly where you were in your testimony. It's up to you. You can keep going, or we can go back and start breaking it down.
So here's what I'll start breaking down the timeline so people can get kind of an idea of where things kind of happened, right?
Yeah, please.
So I was born in 1972, which should tell you about how old I am, ironically. By 1977, age 5, that's when I was in kindergarten, and I was also brought into MKUltra. Now, the way that looks for people is essentially when I went in as a Gen 5, Gen 6 super soldier, what that looks like to people is that I went through what they call the trauma side of training. Now, how do they do that, right? Well, for example, like at age 5, they started me off, and I think I've talked about this previously, where they'd have us in simulations. They'd put us in a simulation room in a cage. This guy with this big wife beater comes in, you have to actually kill him. That's the only way to win the confrontation, is to kill the guy. Step 2 is once you killed him the first time, they put this little girl behind you have to protect. Now, what I've found out post this is the girl who was behind me was the girl who ended up being my XO on board the Franklin. We actually served together in Krueger, which I didn't know either, but we were talking about it, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa. It's like all these little synchronicities. Like she knew the other half of the same story that I already knew.
Wow.
And what we call that is called, we have like what we call a divine partner, or a divine pairing between two people. That's how that shows up. Is they look for people like that, someone who you are in fact divinely connected with, spiritually connected with, that this person can anticipate your behavior, what you're going to say, what you're going to do, and how you're going to act. That way it cuts down reaction time. And this lady ended up, she was that young girl in that cage with me. And the next step was me and her teaming up to beat up the man, to kill the guy, you know. So at age 8, at that point, I would have been probably 1980-ish. Yeah. That's where there's a phrase that Eminem uses in the movie 8 Mile when he's doing his song, where he says, "This is when the mood all changed. It's like having 2 dogs in a cage." That was me at age 8, because at that point the simulations from having this whole simulation side to now actually physically doing something. They actually abducted me and pulled me in to physically actually do a behavior or an act.
So in this, excuse me, for just to help people understand, in this simulation, is this like a hologram? Like you're a guy that comes in, does it look real, or does he see through? Is he transparent?
No, it's real.
Oh,
it looks like it is a real scenario. I didn't even know it was a hologram or a simulation until the very first time I was brought into the actual act at age 8. Okay. That's what one of the guards told me. He said, well, you've graduated all your simulations. Now you can do the real thing.
And then they put you in a real life or death scenario at that point.
Well, the very first real life and death scenario for me was the one that I've chatted about, where they bring me to a room. I've got a guard on either side of me. I'm age 8 at this point. In front of me is a 55-gallon fish tank on a table. In front of the table is a gun. To my right corner, I see someone sitting with a hood on their head. And there's a gentleman sitting back in the shadows. All I can see is his hands, his wrists, and the front part of his feet. And by the way, for those people who don't know, go look up Dr. West. He's a guy who ran MK Ultra for a number of years. He also ran MK Pegasus for a number of years. I believe that guy was him.
Oh.
And based on the ring he had on his hand and based on the way he looked in that memory, from what I've seen of him during his interviews, and get this too, right? So this same guy testified at the Patty Hearst trial, which should tell you that Patty Hearst was probably programmed. And also, too, he testified at the Oklahoma City bombing, which should tell you those two individuals, meaning Timothy McVeigh and his partner, were both probably programmed. So all this crap that people are talking about where they're saying, well, the government wouldn't do that. Well, yeah, they do.
Yeah. Not only do they do it, that's how they operate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that at age 8, I was in this room, and the first 52 times I would not kill the person in the hood. Now, how does that look? Well, either I'm being drowned, electrocuted, meaning electrical straps to your gonads and electrocute you, you die. They could beat the crap out of you, stab you, whatever. Maybe they use a gun on you, right? But those first 52 times I died. At the 53rd time, something changed for me, because when they brought me in, I basically had this thought in my head, is like I'm not doing that again. And when they brought me in the room, by the time he got out, what do you need? He'd normally say, what do you need to do? But when he said, what do you need? I had already grabbed the gun, shot the person in the hood, and I was actually pulling the upper receiver back to see if there's another round inside the magazine. And the gentleman sitting in the chair looked at me and said, why are you checking the magazine before? I said, if there's a second bullet, I'm shooting you. At that point, he said, congratulations, number 3, you passed. Now, what I mean by that is that everyone who's in the programs, when you're going through MK Ultra, you're numbered. Every group, meaning every pod, you should have 20 people in a pod, and they're all numbered. So you have 1 through 20. And I was number 3. And he told me that number 1 through number 2 had already been killed. They were not coming back to the program, so they couldn't pass.
So whenever you say you were killed and you come back, people need to understand that. So is this a regen tank technology? They bring you back, or is this or are they just, is it a clone of you that's being killed and there's original? No. Okay.
This is actually regen or hollow medbed technology. The reason why they do that, the reason why they leave the memory of you dying, is so that when you become an adult, you no longer fear death. You have zero fear of death.
So when you're out on the battlefield, you'll do anything without thinking of the consequences. Yeah.
Correct. And more importantly, also what that does is it also, in my case, and my girlfriend and I've chatted about this, in my case, the other thing that did was it also changed my fight or flight reflex. Meaning that I don't have any flight reflex. Mine's all fight. So when it comes to someone like jumping in my crap and all of a sudden there's like, well, we're going to do this or this to you. It's like my brain goes, okay, it's time for you to die. That's the way my brain computes the math. It's like I'm already a 4th degree black belt and a prior combat Marine. You really want to do this?
Yeah.
Excluding all the super soldier crap, right?
Yeah.
So that's where, for me, my brain is already wired differently than most people in that respect. But what happened at age 8, that started the process where the real stuff started. And they would go through multiple iterations of this until they actually had your brain broken, usually for about a 4-year period. Every night I had abductions. Every night I would go through this. Every night I would, have these iterations. At age 12, that changed again. At that point, they brought me to this place up at the LOC where essentially I was put through what's called super soldier training. It was the very first time I was put into a room with a bunch of kids. If you guys ever watched the movie Soldier, that movie, you go look up Soldier, essentially the way you see the kids being brought up in those groups, military-wise, that is exactly what the beginning of MKUltra looks like when you're actually in the super soldier part. Except they're teaching you how to function as a unit. Like you'll go through tests where you're expected to not talk at all. Because what they're looking for is psychically, they want to make sure all these people are bonded, right? The second thing that happens is they're looking for natural born leaders. Who gives the orders? Well, it was me and another guy, and we were the ones constantly giving the orders. So they broke us up into groups, and we were allowed to run our units as kids. And that's where they start picking out these people with natural leading abilities.
So did you get your memory back immediately, or what, how did that process occur?
So for me, it came in steps, right? The first step was I got out of the military. I basically was a functioning alcoholic, and I had a lot of issues around PTSD, stress, anger. Most of it was redirected anger, I would have to say in hindsight. And a lot of it came from the fact that I didn't realize what had been done to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally made that connection, I was working with this lady, Connie, that I talk about. When she helped me make that connection, all of a sudden, the whole dynamic inside here changed.
Mm.
We started doing all the post-hypnotic regression stuff. And the second half of the session would be like her doing like massage work, Reiki work, energy work, maybe even actual therapy, like sitting and talking about how'd that feel to you, where your emotions at. Let's talk about processing that, right?
Yeah.
So she was a licensed therapist, a board certified therapist and counselor. But she was more like metaphysically minded. And she was the person that kind of helped me navigate through working through all that stress. And what happened is she popped a lot of the memory caps. Now, I would have to say this, at that time, my brain was not ready yet to release that information. So from 96 through 2012, I was going through this steady process of my brain, my subconscious saying, I'm ready to release this now, right? 2012, I had an NDE. All of a sudden, any chemical blank slating, any psychic memory barriers, any of that stuff popped during that NDE. I come back. And by the way, I'm not saying go have an NDE. I have to be clear about this because through some of my discussions, some people have gotten the impression that that's okay to go do. No, it's not. Don't do it.
And some people who don't know what that is because maybe they don't NDE, near-death experience, just
Correct, yeah.
to clarify. Yeah.
So in my case, I had that happen. And then when that happened, all of a sudden, I went through this massive change internally. I had met this woman who I'd been married to. And through that process, I basically had a bunch of these memories starting to crop up. And what I started doing was I took all these old documents that Connie had given me. I had already scanned them into Word docs, basically. And I started formulating the flow of how all this stuff kind of fit together. I was listening to other people who had been through this, and I was trying to reformulate what happened to me. Like, where does that fit structure-wise into what happened to me, right?
Mm.
So over the years, I've been writing all of that stuff down.
Okay.
And what had happened is after I started writing all this stuff down, I started trying to figure out where these memories fit into the timeline. And that's that timeline we were just talking about, right? So yeah. When I got taken up there, this is after the super soldier training, right? So I go through that 14, joined the military. All of a sudden, the abduction stopped. And I'm like, whoa, this is kind of weird. But basically, for a year, I didn't have any abductions. And I thought that was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was my senior year in high school, it was like the most peaceful time I had. Because I already knew I had a job post high school, and I didn't feel like I had the abductions going, so I could actually sleep at night. I didn't have like all the stress and all that crap going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I get in the military, and all of a sudden I see that same folder that showed up from grade school, where I had my name, my data, all the information about me, all my intuitive testing that happened at grade school. By the way, they do this, by the way. A doctor would come to our school, and I was like a disciplinary problem. So like every time I got sent to the principal's office, he'd do like the typical like psychologist voice, right? He'd be like, "Will, let's sit down. Let's talk."
That's a good impression.
"I need you to breathe with me, Will. Can you breathe with me?" He'd do that kind of voice, and you're kind of going, "Oh, okay." And then he'd pull his deck of cards out, and he'd say, "Will, what's on the card? How does this feel to you? What symbol is this?" And it was a Zener deck, by the way, for those people who don't know what a Zener deck is. And I would guess it. I had no idea. He never tell me if I was right or not, by the way. But I would guess the stuff. And when I got in the military, I see we're doing our psyche evals. And here I am as a squad leader, and I've got this other squad ahead of me going through doing their stuff. I'm hearing all the answers that he's talking about. So I'm like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to say when I go in. I literally walk in the door, report in as ordered, sit down. He looks at my name, he pulls his head back a little bit. He gets up, he walks over, he shuts the door, which had been open the whole time, mind you. And then he pulls out the official Marine Corps crap and goes, "Okay, we're just going to pencil whip this. That's done." He goes, "Okay." He goes, "Now let's get to the real crap." And he pulls that stupid binder out. I'm like, "Oh, God damn it."
The binder from when you were a kid.
Yes. And I'm looking at that thing going, "Oh, man, he's going to open that binder and they're going to kick me straight out of boot camp." I thought I was done.
Yeah.
And he opens it up. I see in there, there's like stuff listed in there. It says on the intuitive empathic test part, it's like an 85% accuracy rating from kindergarten up through 11th grade. Right?
That's really good.
On the personality disposition part, that's the part I found problematic, because it had stuff like this individual does not respect authority. This individual is highly aggressive. This individual uses violence as a tool. You know, like shit like this is showing up on the list, and I'm going, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Right. So it's like all this stuff showing up. I'm just like, "Oh Jesus, this is not good." And he looked at it. He's like, "Do you want to serve your planet, your country, and your fellow countrymen and protect them with the best of your abilities? Yes or no?" I looked at him like, "I thought that's what I was doing, sir." He's like, "You don't understand, recruit." He asked me that 3 times. By the third time, I finally said yes. He's like, "When you get to your AIT screening, when they actually screen you again for your AIT testing," he goes, "You need to give the captain who you talk to this word, and he will give you a word if you give him this word." That's how they actually track people who are starting to enter the programs, is through these keywords. Different programs, different access to these programs are tracked by keywords. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
they would have to have some type of system in place. Yeah.
Well, it's called challenge and response system. So when you come into an area and they give you that keyword, what they do is they look at their list and they give you the response to that list, which is them upgrading you or giving you the new keyword or challenging that keyword, right? Point is that happened with me through the military, and happened twice. And the third time was when I went to the moon. So I get deployed to my unit in Okinawa after going through AIT, jump school, all that stuff. I get to Okinawa and we get deployed. And when we got to Diego Garcia, that's where I got taken off planet. We were actually on a refuel. We actually flown from Okinawa, Japan to Diego Garcia, and we landed there to do a refuel. And what they were going to do is fly helicopters from Diego Garcia, or the airplane from Diego Garcia, to either Yemen or UAE, and we take helicopters back down to the Kitty Hawk CH-53Ds. And that was the plan, anyhow.
Now, so all of your training you were just telling us about, that all happened on Earth. All the MK Ultra, all the training. Okay, so then Diego Garcia is an island in the Indian Ocean, for those who don't know.
The actual super soldier training happened up there.
Okay.
But everything excluding that happened down here.
Okay.
Just so we're clear.
And then Diego Garcia, is that just a military base on an island in the Indian Ocean?
It's actually in the Indian Ocean. So this is where I would say the majority of people that go out as foot soldiers, especially for special ops or your Marines or your Navy, you're probably getting flown out of Diego Garcia off planet. This is also the number one place where the Merchant Marine Fleet, when they do exchanges for slaves to whatever, they're doing it here as well. And the point that we were at was an area called Point Marianne, which is the southern end of the airport at Diego Garcia. So if you look in here, there's this long 2.5 mile long runway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Point Marianne is the very southern, I guess, southeastern end of that runway. And that's where I had to walk to from the other end of the runway. We landed, we had to walk from this northwestern tip all the way down to the base down here. There's some empty buildings down at that southeastern end. Point is that as we did that, right, we end up and we get down there, and that's where we went through what they called phase 3 of screening, which basically involves they bring people in from upstairs from the moon. They come in, they essentially do what they call a temporal, synaptic, and physical scan of the body, including DNA. They do that so if anything happens to you, they have a record of how to rebuild you, basically. That makes sense.
It's like a blueprint. Yeah. Yes.
And also, by the way, that blueprint is used when you go through what they call blank slating, and they use that retrovirus to actually rewrite parts of who you are. That is actually what is being done. That retrovirus is being programmed biologically, like a CRISPR bug, to re-edit parts of you to get you back to where you were at age 21.
So that's how the age regression technology works?
It's part of it. They also use chemicals that, it's the same chemicals they're currently using today for like diabetes medication. They also inject that into your system. And what that does is it reduces the inflammation. It reduces the cellular degradation. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And what it does is it basically makes you de-age by 10 to 20 years at a whack. But the virus is rewriting the internal stuff. So that's usually the two-step. Anyhow, the point is that they're doing all this, the baseline, the baseline material to get you back to that point before they even take you off planet. They're also doing a timeline snap, meaning they're looking at where are you at in Earth's current timeline if they have to do a looking glass reinsertion to dump you back here, right?
Yeah.
They want to know the time, the place, location, the timeline, and also, too, what condition are you in that timeline?
When you, I remember on one of your interviews, you were talking about looking glass, and you shared some photos, some drawings of, it was like the actual technology itself and the floor in Area 51 called Alice's Lair or Alice's Floor.
Yeah, it's just right here.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because that is absolutely, I don't know where that stuff comes from, but if it's accurate, that's good to have. That's good to know.
There's actually a guy named Adrian Basaggio who actually released this out to people. He actually put this data out there for folks to look at to show that it was real. And I actually got a copy of it after looking at one of his presentations. Now, this is the interesting part, right? So I want everyone to think about the number of TV, movie, video references that use the white rabbit down here in the bottom left-hand corner.
And the fact that they call that Alice's Floor, and that aligns with some Q drops also in Project Looking Glass.
Correct, yeah. And the white rabbit is essentially the idea of literally going down through the temporal wormhole, going from timeline A, place A, to timeline A, place B, somewhere either forward or back in the timeline. Right?
Yeah.
So yes, this technology does have its pluses and minuses. We actually have a group that works underneath the ICC Super Board. All they do is temporal operations. I've talked about that quite a bit with the change in certain presidents, the change in certain scenarios, temporal timelines being rewritten or flipped or recombined as or as they call it, recombinated. So yeah, that stuff happens. That's why. The bottom line is, all these checks were done. They hit us with a drug. They knocked us out as we were taking our clothes off. They wanted no Terran clothing, no Terran marking on us, including dog tags, by the way. When we went up to the LOC. The next thing I remember was waking up inside the Dart. Me and two other gentlemen.
It's a Dart. I was just going to ask you, what craft did you take to the LOC?
It was a Dart, and the two gentlemen who had knocked us out actually were the two guys piloting the craft. And basically for me, what happened was I woke up inside the Dart and I looked to my right, and down where the handle would be on the door, there's like this embossed area that basically said built by Lockheed Martin, and it had their little emblem on it right in that area of the door. So I know who built the craft.
Of course, we know Lockheed and Boeing. I mean, they've been
well. And I worked for Northrop Grumman underneath of some of Lockheed's programs unknowingly after this.
Really?
Well, that's where these black budget programs spawn from. That's where this technology is created. And there's think tanks. I mean, that's what William Tompkins talks about, sitting in on those think tanks. That's where a lot of these designs came from.
So at that point, as I'm sort of awake, I'm kind of groggy. I hear these two pilots talking about this idea of what they call Jericho, which is a city on the moon. That's what it means in Arabic. And when I heard that phrase, the ship was turning this way, and you could see the broken off Pyramidion and the upper area of the LOC on the moon inside this crater, the Jules Verne crater. And they were diving at this, what looked to me like another crater inside there. I thought we were going to hit the surface. We went right through it. And
it's a hologram.
I blacked out again. And by the time I woke back up, that was when the door was opening up and we were being drugged out of this Dart craft by these guys in black camis. And they bring us into this area that Shoreline uses for reception. And they basically handcuff you to the seat, and they also ankle cuff you to the seat so you can't move or run. And I don't know how long I was there, but I remember this guy sitting next to me basically said, don't look around. They'll see you. If you wake up, they will know you're awake. He said, this guy over here, he's already dead. And when I kind of moved my head up a little bit, this guy had his head all the way back, and he was ashen gray, and he was dead.
Wow.
And they were giving us a drug injection when we were in the chair, which I'm guessing was done to basically magnify or amplify our psychic abilities. Some people don't have the ability to handle that injection very well, or they negatively react to it. Same way we do with viral stuff today here on Earth.
Sure.
Sometimes people's bodies just doesn't agree with the shot, right?
Yeah.
At that point, I'm screened again. And after going through that screening process, I'm essentially put through what they call indoc, which basically means indoctrination. They put you through an MK Ultra upgrade. They give you a whole bunch of packages based on the programs you're going to be in. They call up certain altars. They program those altars up.
Now explain what an altar is.
Sleep.
Explain what an altar is, please, for people who don't know.
Okay, so the easiest way for me to explain this without getting into a whole bunch of psychological technobabble is to say that when you go through trauma, a part of you disassociates from the current cognitive mind. Part of your subconscious will disassociate away from that to protect the mind. And that part that disassociates is the alter ego, the alter.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do in the program is they take that disassociative part, they crack it open, they dump all the memories, the trauma, the pain, all the programming, all the language upgrades, every skill set you would need is dumped into that altar at that time. Every 72 hours after an upgrade, you're tested. So, for example, you might walk into a room and they'll start immediately speaking to you in German. And they expect you to recall and talk in fluent German as if it's a normal thing to do once that altar is activated, which is usually activated through either a set of keywords or a set of key alphanumerics, usually. And as you're talking to these guys, they may have you do like martial arts. Show me this particular martial arts style. You do it. You do a full kata on what that is. Show me how to use this weapon. And they have like weapons laying in front of you on the table. You have to pick the right weapon. You have to be able to basically chamber around, fire the weapon at the target, pull the magazine out and put it back on the table as if it's autonomic reflex.
So it's like the Matrix, basically, in a way.
The Matrix does not do it justice, in my opinion, because it's not like, in my opinion, Neo is still bound by his own brain.
Okay.
Whereas with this, there is no bounds. It's like essentially in the altar, there's nothing up here limiting you on what you can do. There is no limits. There are no morals. There are no laws. There are no black and white. It is just do or not do.
So Neo's character was just to make it digestible for the audience.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, continue. This is fascinating. Yeah.
So once I went through all that stuff, at some point, one of the guards came in and I didn't realize it was my final testing in Indoc. He comes in, he's like, you've already been requested to go to your next assignment. So what I didn't realize at that time until later, when Peter and I were chatting about it, was that Gabriel Krueger had actually requested me to come directly to Krueger because of my test scores. Because he was screening everyone that went through my particular Indoc program. Like, where are these people at on their scores? Like, what are their aptitude tests? What are their IE tests? What are their weapon tests? Martial art tests, all this stuff. What is this person? What can they do? Right?
Yeah.
Apparently, the minute he saw my test scores, he's like, I want that guy and I want him here now. So I get jerked out of training. And I'm thinking I'm getting blank slated, by the way, at this point. I didn't realize I'm being sent somewhere else. I thought I was getting blank slated. But all of a sudden, the guy brings me to a separate room. He says, take off all your clothes. We're going to give you a new set of clothing to walk to the base. That way people don't know who you are or where you are. Change my clothes. We're walking on the first level, by the way, of the LOC. There's a landing area out here. Shoreline's the back area of that landing area. That's where they do all their indocs on the same floor. That way, if you somehow don't make it through indoc, they can immediately take you back to the earth and blank slate you. That makes sense to everyone.
Yeah. And blank slating, I remember you said one time, like 3 to 5% of blank slating of people, it doesn't work on 3 to 5% of people, and you're one of them. And I guess all the whistleblowers are.
Yeah, just to a certain degree, yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, what point does this code word come in that they gave you?
That was during indoc, right when I first woke up, actually. They basically saw me looking around. These guards yell, we have a live one. They run over to where I am. They uncuff me. My legs are actually asleep. I can't feel my legs at this point. They drag me into this room. They're kind of laughing at me because I can't walk. And they slam me down this metal chair, and they recuff me again, hand-wise and ankle-wise. I felt like I was in there for like, I don't know how many hours, but this guy in a white, it looked like a white scientist coat. I jokingly call these guys eggheads. They kind of walk in, and the guy's like, okay, we're going to do the test. And he had like a little pocket protector for pins and all this stuff in it. And he comes in, he's like, okay, we're going to do this test. He goes, what is it that I need to know? And the first 2 times, I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And all of a sudden, the third time, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Keyword, right? Keyword the captain gave me. I gave the guy the keyword, and I see him, he pulls his glass pad out, and he's just scrolling down through it. He's like, whoa. He's like, okay. He clicks on that. He goes, okay, really? All right. And he clicks on some other stuff. There's a large glass double two-way mirror behind him. These people are watching me and him interact. And all of a sudden I hear the scientist say to me, I can hear him say it, but I also heard him say it. He said, is there anything else that I need to know right now? I said, there's a guy standing behind that piece of glass holding a woman in a way that he's going to actually physically injure her. And I said the guy's name because I was looking at him through the reflection in the glass. I could see his name tag in the reflection of the glass. And all of a sudden, the doctor went, what? And they hear this voice come on the loudspeaker. He's like, yep, he's one of us. Go send him through Indoc.
Yeah.
So they were already watching what we were doing.
Yeah.
And that's why I went through this whole Indoc process, right? Well, when I got my clothing changed, that's when this guard basically guided me down to, they call 4-6, which, okay, the upper floor where the landing area is looks like a 1950s military base.
Mm-hmm.
You get down to 4-6, and it looks like a super upgraded, like a high-end mall. If that makes sense to anybody?
Sure.
It's like the walkway area is solid white tile, and on the sides it's these red carpeting. And a lot of the main rooms is red carpeting too, right?
Yeah.
So here I am walking down this hall with this guy as we step out of the elevator, turn to the right. And we're walking down this area this office all the way down the very end. And we stop at the front door. There's these 2 big posters on either side. One is a male in this black body armor, which I might have a picture of here somewhere. See if I can find it real quick.
Does the inside, I've heard Corey Goode talk about the insides of the LOC being like a bell shape. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. Well, I would say it's more spheroid bellish, but yes.
Okay.
So on the poster, this is kind of what it looked like, the armor wise. The artist who did this did a really, really good job. But the idea is that this particular poster, they had two of them, one male, one female. On the bottom of each poster, it said, when you need to tie up all loose ends and you want nothing left undone, call Krueger. And it's all in German, by the way. Right?
Yeah. And Krueger is, it's like an off the books military group up in the SS, in the programs.
Yeah. And another thing too, by the way, I'll show some people this as well. This might actually help some folks if they want to figure out what's going on. So I'll share this as well really quick. This is the website that Peter and Jessica are having us refer people to. This is the ACIO's website. It's acio-agency.org.
It's like Alien Contact Intelligence Organization or something like that?
Yep. And if you go over here to where it has...
Oh, it's at the top. I didn't see it.
Good job reading, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even see it at the top.
If you go down to where it says Worldwide Military Corps and click on that, you can see right here, it actually has Krueger listed as one of the military corps. Now, again, I'm not advocating the timeline or the locations, but I would say in terms of who they are and what they do, this is very accurate.
Did you not say one time there's a video game called like Mirror's Edge or something that uses the Krueger logo?
Yes, yes, actually, that's correct. I might actually have some screen captures out of that, actually, if I think about it here. See here,
guys who for the listeners out there, I know this is a lot of information to digest, and it's hard to get through it all, and really it's hard to get through it without being distracted, because things need to be explained. So we apologize if we're all over the place here, but just bear with us.
This is one of the many images where you see Krueger put on the back wall inside of the Krueger Sec building, and this individual here, believe it or not, in real life, she is the granddaughter of Gabriel Krueger, Faith Connors.
Really?
And this is from the video game, though? This is a screenshot?
This is from from Mirror's Edge Catalyst, the 2019 version, yes. And there's tons of this in there, by the way. Tons of disclosure on stuff.
So direct SSP disclosure down to that person.
Yes. Gabriel Krueger's in that game. Faith Connors is in that game, his granddaughter. There's a bunch of people in there.
What's that one Call of Duty game that has Kevin Spacey in it?
I think
you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Like, where he
that he's like but then
Call of Duty Cold War, maybe. Is that the right one?
But I mean, I'm sure you get to that later. But the guy that looks like Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey shares a special place. The clone of him has shared a special place in my heart, not. And we'll get to that here in a second.
Paul Serene, Paul
Serene, yes, my old buddy, yes. But the idea is that I get to Krueger, and when I walk in the door, there's a desk to the left, a reception desk. The lady sitting at that desk is Gabriel Krueger's daughter, Alexandria. And she stands up, and this guard the whole time in the elevator, he's like, don't fuck this up for me. I got the hots for this girl. She's really pretty. If you screw this up, I will make sure you're blank slated, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. He's giving that whole speech, right? I'm kind of like, whatever, And we get in there, and I see Alexandria stand up, and he hands her my glass pad. And all of a sudden, as she's reading the glass pad, Gabriel Krueger walks out of his office and comes out front, and he's standing there looking right at me. And he walks over and looks at the glass pad that his daughter's looking at, and he makes a recommendation. He says, put him in Naguma's company and put him in Peter's fire team.
So what?
Now, I'm going to get to that reference in just a second, okay, so people understand the impact of that statement, right? So he walks back over to his office. This guy who I call Commander Naguma, which may be the wrong name, but in my head, that's what I seem to remember. He comes out, and I've actually met this guy in the here and now. He does have memories of Faith because Naguma was dating Faith up there, and he's looking at my glass pad, and he's like, "Holy shit! Look at the scores this guy's got." And Alexander's like, "Yeah, Dad says to put him in in your company with Peter, right? The Peter he's talking about is Peter the Insider's fire team.
Okay.
Peter and I served together in Krueger for a while.
Interesting.
That's where the baseline information is. Like, Peter and I, we know each other on that level. Like, we served together. Like, I know his voice. I know how he's going to react. Psychically, I know how he thinks. That's what happens when you're in a fire team. You guys get kind of synced up, and when you're doing stuff, it's like you kind of enmeshed. You kind of know exactly what that person's going to do.
Sure.
So,
and that's why Peter, the Insider, has been such a crucial part of a lot of people coming forward.
Yeah. And also, too, by the way, I'll say this: if you go back to that ACI website, so yeah, Peter's stuff is on there. I'll share this really quick that way you guys can look at it while we're talking about it. We actually put what we call it up here on the menu. We had ACI Associates, and Peter's bio is up here as well, by the way, and so is Jessica's. When you click on that, it brings up James's bio, it brings up Anthony Zender, and it brings up mine. This guy Michael down here, he is the guy who was in fact Commander Naguma, the guy I'm calling Commander Naguma.
Oh, interesting.
So anyhow, the idea is that so Naguma takes me back. He brings me into what's called receiving, right? The first thing they do when you go into Krueger is they actually put you into a clone body. That's the very first thing they do right off the bat. They have you take off all your clothing. They put it on this little like cart that's like next to this little cryo unit. They bring you over to a tank where you basically step inside this vertical tank. It fills up with this liquid auger mask on that has a display on the inside and a display on the glass. And what's happening is as this tank fills, what they're doing is they're getting ready to transfer the essence, either the alter or what's in your brain, to the clone.
Interesting.
Now, I looked over to my right, in my case. The clone was in the tank, already filled up asleep. And it looked like me, but it was much larger and very physically edited. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And I started to panic a little bit, and the doctor was he's standing right in front of me. I can hear him talking to me through the earbuds in my mask. He says, "Don't worry, everyone panics the first time. He goes, just relax, and we'll get you taken care of." And he's speaking in German. He's speaking in German, by the way. And I'm kind of like, listen, I'm hearing him like, wow, I should understand this guy, what he's saying. It's weird. And all of a sudden, I start pumping this gas in. I blacked out. And next thing I know, I'm waking up over in the other body.
When you woke up in the other body, could you see your original body?
Yeah, they were draining the tank. They pulled it out, put it inside a cryo unit, and slid it back inside this cryo storage area. Where they had a bunch of people that were in cryo.
And then that body is just kind of remained there for the duration of your time in the programs, and they put you back in that body before you were spliced back.
Krueger and Monarch are a few of the programs that use clone bodies. MDF and Knockwaffen do not.
Okay.
They do not use clones. But Krueger does. And because what happens is with Krueger, since you're what they call a direct action team, what happens a lot of times is if you ever get shot, if you ever get wounded, if you ever die, there's two things they do. One, they always bring the body back. That way they can't recover the tech from the body because you're usually full of femtotech and other stuff that other companies want. And secondly, the part of you that's in the brain rehomes right back to the cryogenically stored body. It's like having this weird kind of a weird save game. You ever played video games and you have like a little save spot where you're like going in to do your boss fight, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're back in your body and you're like, crap, you know? They put you back in the tank, new clone, they send you back down at the same boss again.
It's almost like that's where they got it, the idea for respawning in a video game from the program.
Yes. But that's what happens in some cases. It happened to me a few times. And what ends up occurring is at a certain point, you figure out that you also have these MK Ultra abilities that are there as well, the super soldier abilities. So working with some of the technology in there, they would have some of us work in the labs. This guy that we call Dr. N, essentially he was the guy that built all of the implants and augments for people. He also gave the guidelines on cybernetics if they were to be used in Krueger. And a lot of times, like with me, he would have me test the implants, the stuff they put on the outside of the skin that activated some of your super soldier abilities, right? it can immediately subconsciously tap into that part of the psyche that says, well, I'm going to manipulate time. I'm going to warp and manipulate time, space, matter to do such and such. Right. So a couple of us, level 1 super soldier is what we call a runner, the equivalent of a runner in Catalyst. Right.
Yeah.
What we would do is what I would do is Dr. M would give me a new implant, wherever it happened to be. He'd say, go test it. So what I would do is I'd get into some running gear. I would go up to level 1, piss off the security guys, and try to make it back down via the stairwells, back down to level 6 without getting caught. And I did it every single time.
Really?
I would literally use the walls. Like, you know what parkour is? It's essentially what we were trying to do. They would upload parkour into our brains. Nice. And we would literally use the walls. Like I would manipulate an area on the wall. Peter said he had a video of this where he watched me change the actual gravity of the wall. So I could run up the wall and then shoot off the wall and land somewhere else. And I changed the gravity there so I could bounce and roll.
Wow.
And these guards that changed right after I left it, the guards couldn't do it. And they were actually getting injured trying to jump or move or do whatever like I did.
We see disclosure of all of this in movies and video games. Even the Bourne Identity movies,
Yes.
That's a super soldier disclosure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Treadstone, Blackbriar, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And even the assets and everybody that's hired in that movie, they're all super soldiers. I mean, they all doing parkour and their fighting abilities are just like elite. And hearing you talk, that's what I think of.
It is the same thing. I look at that, and by the way, they're also both ran by the CIA. So just so clear.
Yeah.
So, the guy who was handing me off to the programs was the CIA attaché that was attached to our unit. I believe he was there for a reason.
Yeah.
He's also the same guy who later on got me into some issues while I was actually deployed with Krueger. This guy that we used to call the John, John David Lynch. You probably heard about him in some of the Call of Duty games.
Oh, okay.
Another guy by the name of Jason Adler that worked with him. It's also in Call of Duty. Those monikers are real names. But the thing with John David Lynch, his actual name is Burke, Martin Burke. And so there's a whole big story behind that Peter and I have been kind of weeding out, trying to find the truth in the middle of all that. But the idea is that these CIA people use human assets and trade human assets and move them into the program so that the programs can stay continually active.
So then, there are multiple programs going on at one time, and you ended up in Krueger, which, like I said earlier, that's like kind of an off the books program. Can you explain what life was like in Krueger and what you guys did there?
So the phrase for Krueger is actually Krueger Mercenary Corps, KMC, is the joke that we kind of talk about within the group. And the Mercenary Corps, you're correct, it was an off-the-books Black Ops military budget program. We used TR3s to do inserts into our target locations, either on planet or off planet.
TR3, a triangle craft, the black triangle? Okay.
Or gray, some more gray. Depending on the revision. Like if you go A through C, I think they're black. As soon as you get to the D revision, it's more like a gunmetal gray color on.
Interesting.
But they are triangular craft, and they vary in size. Some of them do. But the idea is that we use those craft to do insertions and extractions, meaning your infill, exfil portion of the mission. So we did that. We did tons of training on that every day. We do these little drills. You run on board the craft. You'd sit down in the seats. They would call the drill that they would do was they would actually have a pilot actually activate the light tree that's right behind the officer. So at red, you're in your seat. At orange, you're actually standing up and you're getting ready to actually step on these yellow footprints. When the yellow comes on, you step on the yellow footprints and pull these two cords down, it locks into your armor, the DLI, the dual line insert system. At green, the bottom of the ship actually opens up and they drop you out.
Wow.
All that takes about a minute. It has become autonomic, basically, is what they're trying to do.
So that was the training. Did you ever do that? Did you ever actually do that in real missions?
We did it for every mission we did.
Okay.
minus 2 that I know of. And those were both off planet. They were actually elsewhere.
So these were missions on Earth you're talking about.
Yes.
So what kind of missions were you actually doing here on Earth then?
Well, we had a variety of missions. One, you have to understand that most of what Krueger did in terms of mission parameters was all ICC super board certified and okayed. Meaning the triumvirate basically came in and said, we need you to do mission X or assist with mission X. So what they would typically do is they'd have Earth Defense Forces dealing with part of it. They would call in Krueger to deal with the part that didn't want to get screwed up. So there may be ETs on the planet, but they'd have us come retrieve the tech or us deal with the big baddies that the normal EDF guys could not deal with. Because we had amped up bodies, we had super soldier abilities, all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, I think I remember you telling the story one time that like they almost were using a kind of a looking glass technology or something. They would actually see the mission before it happened, so that you would know exactly what you needed for that mission, and
yes.
And if somebody was going to get hurt, you knew what type of medical gear to bring.
Yeah,
that's fascinating to me.
They have folks that do that. They can dip into the highest probable timeline, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean it's always going to happen that way. The mission that retired me out of Krueger actually did not happen the way the looking glass technology said it would.
Really?
What it tells you is that the individual who in the CIA basically screwed us over, he actually made a decision during that mission live that caused me and Peter and other people to get either hurt, retired, or dead.
Really?
Yep.
But prior to that, it was always just wham bam. You knew exactly what you're doing in and out, effortless kind of.
I would say the 3 big tags that would always show up in our missions, and we did like 60 plus missions with Krueger. Okay, so the 3 big tags that always showed up. The first one is Mobius tech, which essentially is timeline co-creative manipulation tech that was developed prior to us here, and Mobius hijacked it, started using it, and we started recovering it to shut it down.
Isn't that the soul trap technology? Is that not Mobius or not?
It fits the same profile, yes. I would have to say, in my opinion, yes, it is the same technology. But the idea of a soul trap, it's not the really correct term. That's actually an incorrect moniker for what that technology really does. But the idea is that you have to understand that we're living in a created pocket universe because Mobius had screwed up the previous attempts to try to manipulate our universe. So do that for a minute. All right.
Do any of this for a minute. Shit.
That'll warp some people's noodles, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is that technology it can be unstable, but ETs typically have been using it because of that instability. They know it has an area of effect. So, for example, this is what I'll talk about for just a second here. Think about the unrest that's been going on in the Middle East for the number of years it's been there, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is that these ET groups and Mobius have been plopping Mobius tech right in these hot spots, and the area of effect is affecting everybody around it. This is why you see these wars start cropping up in certain areas, or the Arab Spring, or all of these Muslim insurgencies and riots in Europe, for example, or what happened in Russia with Chechnya and all these, the issues they had there. All that crap.
Is it like a group think? It makes everybody puts everybody on the same page.
Sort of, yeah. What it does is the unit basically has these 2 large twisted crystals inside it. They're the power source that manipulates the time, space, matter around us, right?
Mm-hmm.
The actual processing unit has 4 buttons on it. And that tells them to what degree they're going to manipulate that co-creative ability we have. And what it does is it actually continually suggests to the people in that area of effect that maybe you should do this. It's continually trying to implant that thought into the thought streams, right?
And it's like a subliminal message, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but it's happening on a brainwave frequency. So you have this information constantly being dumped, right? Constantly reinforced, constantly dumped. And all of a sudden people start having this thought of, well, maybe I should go do that. And all of a sudden now they're being controlled by that tech, right?
Wow.
It's one of the things that super soldiers are actually immune to is Mobius tech. because we've already gotten our brain hemisynced. Outside influences don't affect us that way anymore.
So where do you said the Middle East, this technology is located? I mean, I can see
all
this
over the world.
All over the world, yeah.
All over the world, but that's one of the areas that specifically that we kept going back to a lot there in Europe.
I feel like this would be used in like major cities and stuff to you can keep people asleep that way, right?
Yes, absolutely, right.
Yeah. You can put low vibe thoughts into their head and like very primitive desires and cravings and stuff like that.
If you have an area where, let's say that you're trying to make sure that people do not revolt, you could program the tech and turn it on and actually put it on what they call aggressive mode, which is the top mode. And that's exactly what you're talking about with people going to sleep. People will not, they will not rebel. They're like, I don't want any part of that. I don't want to mess with El Jefe. I don't want to mess with, Leticia, sorry. They won't do it. And because they're afraid, and they basically, the co-creative part of their brain is basically telling them that I do not want any part of any sort of insurrection or rebellion or revolution.
Is this what happened in Phoenix, the Phoenix Lights, why nobody remembers that? Like it just kind of came and went? Can they do that to make people forget this UFO sighting?
They can, and they call it these gases that the Draco used in their craft. They can also, I think William Tompkins even talked about this.
William Tompkins.
Yeah, he actually has an actual photograph of the reptilian tanker emitting this gas. Yeah. So
you have this gas that can be put over large population areas, right? It does that too, but on a more direct interaction layer, right? So there's multiple ways they can do this, and they usually use the tech and the gas in areas with high population centers. Contrails is another way to tell if you're in a high population center, by the way. If you do not have contrails above where you live, they're probably not using Mobius tech or the gases there.
Oh, they're using them here. Using it here for sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
So that was, I would say the Mobius tech was number one. Off-worlders, meaning people who are not Terran, would be number two. And three would be we would be given directives and mandates directly by the super board, meaning the missions I talked about, Paul Serene, where I took his clone out, right? Yeah. That was an actual triumvirate direct action mission that we were told we had to do. There was no way of getting around that. We were basically told we have to do this, and that is that, and have fun. And
so, go ahead.
So basically, that's the three main groups of the missions you typically find Krueger people in, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And usually they're contracted, they're paid and contracted to go do that particular mission. So
let's get in. I mean, this could go on forever. There's a million directions we could go, but you mentioned Paul Serene and Kevin Spacey. So how many? So from what I understand, Kevin Spacey is a clone of Paul Serene, basically. But Kevin Spacey doesn't actually know that there's another version of him in the programs.
Paul Serene is using a cloned body of Kevin Spacey, yes.
Okay. And then this is the case with other actors and politicians or not? Like I've heard you say Tom Cruise before, I think.
So if you look at Monarch, which is the company that Paul Serene owns and operates, he actually provides a security service to Hollywood and elite people who have the money to pay for a clone. And what he does is he gives them the ability to give them that what he calls ultimate blanket security, meaning if they kill the clone, you're still alive, right?
Sure.
We'll even provide psychological services to help you when you come back, sort of thing. That's the way he markets this to the Hollywood, the political people, your CFR Bilderberger people, all those guys. And what ends up happening is that when he gets that genetic sample, they have the ability to use that clone elsewhere now.
I've heard that, I don't even know where I heard this from anymore, but I've heard that like Tom Cruise in particular, like they use his clone in movies. That's why he does all of his own stunts, and that's why he doesn't need a stunt double because it's his clone.
I would disagree with that because I know he broke his ankle filming one of the Mission Impossible movies.
Okay.
And he talked about it. But the clone being used actually is a guy who actually runs the Umbrella Corp. And you guys may have heard of the what's the game where they have the the zombies that are created by the virus.
Resident Evil.
Yeah.
That's Umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Again, hard disclosure showing what Umbrella does as a biological weapons manufacturer. So they take off-world tech, they turn it into bioweapons, and they sell it to the other programs. In terms of like, what they're doing, how they're doing it. The Umbrella tech basically falls into the NBC category, right? Now, typically they don't do nuclear, but they definitely do chemical, biological tech all the time. The guy who runs this name is Richard Bay. He's the guy running Umbrella Corp, and he's not a nice gentleman. So basically, on that page we were looking at that had the worldwide military corporations, I'll bring this back up again here real quick.
Yeah,
so you guys can see this. Basically, you see this little statement here. It says 4 corporations with positive influence on humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you scroll down, it says corporations with a negative influence on humanity. And look who the top one listed here is. It's Monarch. Monarch, Mobius, and Delphi. Umbrella is also listed here too. Murkoff, Shaw House. There's quite a few of them in here. But the idea is that as these corporations start doing more and more operations against the will of the people here on the planet, that shoves them more to that negative category. That makes sense to people.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I remember you saying one time there's a photograph on the internet somewhere of Kevin Spacey and with somebody else.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine Maxwell, Ghislaine, however you say her name. But it's actually not Kevin Spacey. That's actually Paul Serene in that photo.
Yes.
Are you able to pull that up?
I haven't been able to find it. They took it off the internet.
Makes sense.
No, of course
they scrubbed a bunch of crap off the internet here within the last 4 months. Basically, the easiest way to tell when you look at a picture of Kevin Spacey to figure out if it's him or Paul is when you watch the body language, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Kevin's a great actor, don't get me wrong. But the idea is that when you watch the body language involved with how Paul operates, he understands that if something happens and he's out in public, Kevin's the one taking the hit, not him.
So he could potentially be the one who's responsible for all the pedophilia allegations.
Yeah, he actually is. I'll say that on the record. Yes, he is.
So it's not technically, it's not Kevin Spacey.
No.
I wonder how many other people that's the case for.
Well, and I'll show another good example, right? So you look at Shaw House, for example, that Peter talks about all the time. Jeanette Shaw uses a clone of Taylor Swift, and guess what? Their office is in London, and who is she currently dating? She's dating a very well-known British actor who lives where? In London. So you have to start asking some questions. Who are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with Taylor or are we dealing with the clone? It's Jeanette Shaw.
Yeah. It's so fascinating about so much information about this clone program coming forward. I think that's going to be.
So there are 3 reasons why 3 big companies who use clones and practice and study with clones. First is Krueger. Second is Monarch, because of the security solution they're providing to Hollywood, the elites, these big elite groups, right?
Yeah.
The third one is a company that Peter's talked about, USS Ark Corp. And what they're doing essentially, Peter and I chatted about this company, Ark, in that title, stands for Antediluvian Recovery Center. And what that means is they're going through looking at all these people's genetics on Earth. They're trying to recover what they call the Adam genes, the Adamo genes. If you look back at Zechariah Sitchin or the Adaharsa story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, that idea of Adamo, meaning the first man, meaning the first us, that particular being had a lifespan in current years of 720 years, which is a reason for that astrologically, which I could go into, but I don't have time to do that. But the idea is that they're trying to find the genetics that allows us to go from a 72-year lifespan back to that original genetics of 720. The Lyrans are doing this, by the way, because they consider us to be their genetic cousins. So just so we're clear.
So, wow, this is deep stuff. So the cloning, I just think the clone program is going to be a major part of disclosure that I think most of the public is going to have the hardest time with, knowing that some of their politicians and actors have been clones the entire time.
there's two things I'm going to say directly about the whole clone aspect that I have a big issue with. And I've said this, you guys have probably heard my videos where I've talked to this guy who's a policy guy for Biden, right?
Oh, yeah.
When I sent my letters to him, the clone aspect of this was the hardest for me to write because I had a lot of heartfelt issues around it. How are people going to feel when they find out there's a copy of them up there being used for, sexual slavery, torture, they're being partially eaten, regenerated, all kinds of stupid shit. And then you've got the other aspect of this is what happens if we bring them back and this person commits a crime and it looks like you did it.
Yeah. I mean,
genetically, they're an exact copy of you.
Sure.
Yeah. It's a huge problem.
I'll just say this. I have no way of verifying it, but I've had somebody make me aware, and I'm not going to disclose who, but they said that there's a clone of me alive right now in S4, Area 51, basically, living at the same time, basically. And I was cloned at age 5, and this whole thing, I'm like, I don't know if that's true. I have no way of knowing that, but
they do that sometimes.
Hearing these testimonies, it's just like, well, it seems possible. I have no idea.
So the other side of this too, right, is the fact when you get into programs like Krueger, you realize also the security necessity of having clones, right? Because you realize if you don't have an asset in the clone body and you lose that clone asset either through capture or killing, all of a sudden you've now lost, 21 years of training plus the cost of the clone, plus the cost of the individual and the training. And for a clone, it's an easy payout. You pay $1.7 million, you have a new clone sitting there, and you've got the asset information still contained in the frozen cryo asset. To me, it's a no-brainer. That's like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
It's hard. That is going to be tough. Like you said, when people discover that about themselves, that's not easy. That's not easy. That's why when people say like full disclosure now,
on top of just the trafficking and child trafficking, pedophilia.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect of this, right? So when we talk about this idea of healing, where Ted and I and some others have talked about this idea of working through our internal work and doing the healing, right?
Yeah.
Working with a therapist, working with, specialists, working with, spiritual specialists to do this kind of work. What we're really saying is that the part of what's going on is that you also have to process all that stuff that happened to you as a child, right? So think about this, right? I mean, again, I don't want to get you guys knocked off of your channel, but there are particular topics that show up around the child end of this that don't show up anywhere else in the programs, right? You have all the child sex trafficking. You've got clones being made of these kids. And the thing is, oh, by the way, a lot of these kids, I have a friend of mine, I've told this story before. He's a SEAL team commander. He actually was in Michigan. They did a retrieval up there. It was 123 kids. It made the news, made ABC News. And when they got there, he was actually out on the boat first off, training with the Coast Guard in Lake Erie. JSOC calls him on the sat phone and says, "You're going to be taken off the boat and you're going to Michigan." Okay. They come back to shore. CH-53D picks them up, takes them to this place in Michigan. When they land, there's already FBI at both ends of this underground bunker. It's a warehouse. Now, here's the thing, right? When you're looking at a building and it has case steel, fire and blast-proof doors, that takes money.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. But these guys get there, and the FBI can't get in. They've been hitting it with bullets. They've been trying to, take it off the hinges, whatever. The door won't budge. And they asked the SEAL commander, said, "Can you guys make those doors go away?" He asked one of his guys who's an EOD guy. He says, "Can we do that?" And the guy's like, "Yep, we got that in the bag." And all of a sudden the doors get blown off the hinges. And when they go in, they took those 8 guys inside this front office area. 6 of those 8 guys died. 2 were restrained. They were trying to keep them from getting to this back door that actually went into the main warehouse area. Inside that main warehouse area, they had suspended cages with 123 kids in it. Each kid's in a singular cage.
Wow.
And these kids have been tortured. They have been, all kinds of bad stuff. But the big thing that hit there was a certain chemical they'd been extracting out of these kids, and they were storing it in these large 55-gallon drums they were shipping elsewhere.
Adrenochrome?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, right? So a kid typically produces 6 to 8 ounces of adrenochrome over the course of their life, right? Think about this. And they've got 55-gallon drums of it.
Gosh.
Jesus. I mean, yeah, and that's one tiny facility that they were able to break into. There's thousands probably. I mean, and that's just on Earth.
When I was talking to this guy via phone call, his comment to me was, he's like, Will, he goes, I've seen all kinds of crap, that I've seen in combat, I've seen in battle, I've seen all kinds of stuff. And he goes, I still can't get that vision out of my head. He goes, us trying to get these kids out of this cage, and these kids, that's why they lived their entire life was inside this cage. They've never been outside that cage. Most of them are clones. They're not even on the record. None of them had any sort of SSNs. None of them had any sort of documentation or names. They're all tracked by a number. And the system they track these people in is the same system they use off planet called TAPSIS, which essentially is a slave tracking system, essentially, asset tracking system. And these kids have been put in the system. They were being tracked. They're being used. And it was completely off the books. No one knew who these people were, who these kids were. These kids were not really, quote unquote, missing, which means either another slave was bred to make these children, or they were cloned.
Wow.
But the idea is this is the negative aspect of cloning too, right? So when you have people using technology in ways that was never designed or meant to be used, this is what happens.
I've also heard you say that reptilians clone humans as meals, basically, or something along those lines. Like they just they clone people just because they eat us basically alive.
So we are considered a delicacy by the Draco, and one of the things we have to kind of understand is that part of what happens is some of these slaves will get partially eaten and then regenerated. And here's the thing, right? You're never that memory's never wiped out of your head.
Yeah.
So this person's continually going through this process of regeneration and being eaten.
The level of technology involved here is humanity is just not, they will not be able to wrap their head around it. I mean, people like us, because we've been listening to you, we understand that it's out there, but we have no way, we don't know how it works. And we've never seen it actually in action. We just hear about it. So even I think we would be shocked at some level with seeing it. That's where I think people are going to have the hardest time, is just not even that this stuff is happening, but the technology that they're using to accomplish all this stuff.
It's been running for a long time. The program's been running for a very long time.
Yeah. If
we speak in just current modern day here and now terms, we can definitely track it back at least to the 20s and 30s of 1920, 1930s. So when people tell me that there's no way we could have this level of technology, it's like, well, this program's already been technically in place in the here and now for at least 100 years. And think about, if you look at, was it Miller's Law or Smith's Law that talks about the technology doubling every so many years?
Yeah.
Or the technological level of advancement doubling every so many years. Well, think about these SSP programs that have been doubling since 1920, 1930.
Yeah.
They've been doubling too.
Yeah.
And they've been doubling already, starting off advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because ETs have basically seeded that technology, seeded the information here.
Yeah.
In the German case, we had Lyrans and Draco seeding this information to them. We also had the Vril seeding technology to them, right?
Yeah.
The Japanese had Lyrans seeding information to them as well. And then all of a sudden, this technology just kind of poofs out of nowhere. Well, not really out of nowhere, but it's from these ET species, right? So, and the thing is, we've been using clones down here too, right? So look at as another weird example of cloning. Look at Japan and Korea, right? Who've both been at the very, very front edge, the razor's edge of what is considered to be human and animal cloning today, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing this for a long time. Where do you think they got the technology from? Well, from up there. They gave the Japanese that technology, and the Japanese outsourced it to South Korea, and they're now both the leading leaders in that area of technology. It's it's a no-brainer to those of us in the programs.
How many soldiers do you think in World War I and II were clones? I've heard that almost the whole army was a clone army from certain sources. I don't know if that's verifiable or not.
They do not use augments or clones down here, first off and foremost.
Okay.
But they do use augments and clones up there in certain organizations. Nakwaffen, they don't like augments. What I mean by an augment, by the way, is the idea that you have a being who's a clone who's been genetically changed to have a certain genetic disposition up there. They will, in fact, edit humans in their 1.0 bodies to make them compatible for up there in Nakwaffen, Rajir. And many of us have been. MDF, you're already technically edited, because you've already went through Inkeltra and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they do use, in Krueger, they do use cyborgs. They do use, and cyborgs usually is in a clone body as well, by the way, just so we're clear. But they use a lot of cloning there, a lot of heavy cloning, because to them, it's easier to take a clone, manipulate it the way you want, and transfer the essence in, because the essence and the clone come from the same DNA source, right? Now all of a sudden you have a link. It's kind of like Avatar, right? When you watch the movie Avatar,
Mm-hmm.
where the brother who was also the twin of the guy who died could also take over that same Avatar body because of the genetic linkage, right?
Okay.
It's the same thing in Krueger, where you have a genetic linkage between you and that clone. And there's also a linkage between your biochip and that clone body as well. And Peter's talked about this quite a bit with James and others. But the idea is that biochip is also a link to that same clone as well.
So what are the potentials of Hitler being cloned? What happened with him? Have you heard any of that?
Well, okay, so there's three main stories I've heard. All right, so if you follow the standard historical narrative, he died in Berlin, which I don't believe, by the way, but
Sure.
that's the mainstream historical narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The story that I do believe, based on all the research, based on everything that I've seen, was the story that Bob Baer did in his TV series Hunting Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was the closest to the facts based on everything they were able to uncover. And he died in South America in 1965.
Yeah, he basically went to Argentina.
Well, he actually died up north of Argentina. But yes, it was actually a small city that was there, a small group of people. Martin Bormann, Hitler, and a few others all escaped up to this little area, and they started raising families, having their own life there. They had a ton of capital to work from. They bought their own houses, started businesses. But the idea is that they didn't think that was abnormal. And by the way, these individuals that went to South America were people that were chosen or not deemed essential for the secret space programs. Because what happened was all the people that went to base 211 in Antarctica, New Schwabenland,
mm-hmm.
those individuals were trying to make a legitimate break from the Nazi Third Reich. We actually call those guys Antarctic Germans, or AGs.
AGs, yeah.
Now, that particular group was very afraid politically that the UN and the U.S. military specifically, like what happened with Operation High Jump, would try to come down and actually try to wipe them out. So by the end of World War II, they were already off planet and up at the LOC. They moved all their assets, all their people, anything of importance to the programs up there. They did keep some people down at Base 211 because of what we saw with Operation High Jump. But I personally feel that was a security contingent, because we're still Draco in the base when they left, because that base at New Schwabenland actually rented from the Draco.
Yeah. So the Draco base was already there before they even moved in, basically. They kind of they were working with the Draco the entire time.
Yeah,
anyway.
The Larens and the Vril, yes.
Yeah. So you talked about your two theories on Hitler. Was there a third one?
The third theory that I heard, and again, I have no way to confirm this, but I've heard it from multiple people, so that there may be some truth to this, was that Hitler was in fact cloned, essence copied and transferred, and he was taken off planet at one point. The original biological body died in 65. This copy was taken off planet, and I've heard that it was either in Ceres or Mars where they saw a copy of that clone. And both, by the way, both of those locations both had German, what we call Mars German influences, the MGs.
Yeah.
They both had groups up there who were in fact actually, Mars Germans. That is plausible that they could have taken him up there as, some way to maintain this idea of what happened on Earth. Now, the narrative is when they started taking these slaves off planet, they knew they had to have a way to keep them from rebelling. So they made up the story of a Third World War, the Earth in 1949 getting cobalt bombed, and there's no way for them to go back.
Okay. I've heard that. I think I've heard you say that before. Yeah.
And James and I have talked about it. Peter's talked about it. I've heard that from multiple people.
Even Tony Rodriguez, who we just had on, he talked about it also. Yeah.
Well, and that's the story I heard actually at Ceres. That's the first place I ever heard it was at Ceres.
Yeah.
Tony and I talked about it when we did my talk on his channel, where my security group was brought in. We cleaned up a mess that the Fuhrer of the base wanted us to clean up, the command of the base. And we're basically waiting to be debriefed, and we were told to go have a lunch or dinner or whatever. Our guys are sitting in one area, and there's some slaves operating on Ceres, sitting right next to us at a table, and they're all talking about this narrative about how Earth was wiped out in 49 by these big cobalt bombs. And the equivalent type bomb they're talking about is if you look at what the Russians did with the Tsar bomb, the RDS-220, that's equivalently the size of the bomb they're talking about here. Looking like a massive bomb.
Really?
Right? And I heard that narrative there, but I was like, what are these guys talking about? Earth's still fine. I didn't say this, but I'm definitely thinking it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the programs, by the way. A lot of times when you're in doing your job, you think a lot of stuff, but you never say it out loud. Not the point, though. The point is that that is a common narrative that you do hear up in some of the German facilities off planet. They talk about that particular narrative.
Yeah. Well, and so there seems to be a large German presence in the solar system. I mean, how many breakaway civilizations or off-world colonies do you think they have besides Mars and Ceres?
Well, there's been three potential breakaway civilizations, right? The Mayans, potentially the Templars, and the Germans for different reasons. Okay, we know for a fact the Mayans definitely did, because they were actually picked up by the Palladians and taken to Taygeta, where they were allowed to settle there.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah.
Well, actually, CG talks about it in one of his episodes on Cosmic Disclosure, and I've heard other people talk about it.
That's why I heard that. Okay, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. But the fact is, I actually have met that group of individuals. That's why I'm saying that. There was some speculation that's happened with the Templars, although I have no proof of that. And the third group was obviously the Germans, who were influenced to start moving that way, and they did. They were able to make technology. See, the first two groups would have been taken off planet. This third group, they wanted them to actually leave the planet on their own, under their own technology and their own guidance. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. We had the Germans moving to the moon, and eventually to Mars, and they move into the belt, which is where Ceres comes into play. And they started establishing other facilities on Jupiter, Saturn, and other places in the system, even all the way out to the Oort cloud, like Maki Maki and other locations.
Now, is Maki Maki, there's a station just past the Oort cloud, I've heard. It's like a very high-ranking station. Is that Maki Maki, or
yes?
Is that okay? And that's like between here and Alpha Centauri.
Well, it's actually just on the very verge of the outside of the Oort cloud, and it is used as a security observation post. That is actually a pretty highly classified location, because what they're doing is any fleet that would try to come into our system, 9 times out of 10, gravitationally speaking, they're going to come in along the ecliptic plane of the system. Meaning, if you're looking at the sun, you would try to come in, the ships would try to come in inside the gravitational ecliptic of that system, because they can slingshot around planets and save fuel. That's typically what an invading species would do. That's what we did. So what you typically see happen is that as that that particular ship or group of ships comes in, the armada would come in, they're going to come along the ecliptic, and Maki observes that ecliptic plane because it's not in the ecliptic plane. And what it does is it would tell the LOC, hey, you've got a large group of inbound ships coming in. You need to do something about it.
Interesting. So have you actually been to that station?
Yes. It's also a refueling station too, but yes.
Well, what do you use for fuel?
Well, for example, like some of the smaller craft, they actually use fusion cells.
Okay.
They might even use nuclear reactive components in some of the older ships. You also do crew retrofits. So, for example, you might take a Mantis or a Dart from, say, Earth out to Maki, drop people off. If they're not using a gate system, by the way, they could do it that way. And what would happen is you could transfer people, personnel, equipment, whatever you need. It's also a way to keep the Nakwaffen fleet out of the solar system, right? Now, we already have gate systems set up at New Earth, or what we call Corellia. You can walk straight in from that gate directly into the LOC. This is also the same gate system that's used from LAX to Mars and to the LOC as well.
Yeah, I've heard about that one just outside of LAX.
Yep.
Like a jump room, yeah.
Well, that jump room you're talking about is the gate system itself, right? Okay. So that's the quickest way to get people and things between these locations. But at the same time, there are cases where you don't want to do that, especially if you're using what they call a security controlled asset, like a cyborg, that doesn't have all of its mental components. Yeah, you don't want to use a gate system with a cyborg. Bad.
What did the inside of the station look like? Maki. Are any of these stations or ships like organically based?
No.
This is okay.
They start off TBM. They send a crew in that does the TBM portion first. Then they drill out the whole, like the guts of the station first. And as that station is going, it's actually creating concrete or the wall segments out of the actual material as TBMing. When the TBM's finally removed, they bring in these engineers who set up the environmental stuff first. I mean, it's like a pressurize the base, right?
Okay.
And that's the first thing that usually happens is once they get those engineers done, that's when they bring in all the other people to set up the electronics, to set up all the wiring, to set up all of if you're using the communications gear or any of that kind of stuff. At that point, that comes in after all the TBMing and the initial environmental stuff set up in place.
Wow. That's fascinating. Your knowledge on this is so vast, and I didn't even expect you to know the construction process. So this is not like a space station like we would imagine. It's like a planetary body that they kind of take over.
Convert it to base, yeah.
Okay. Going back to your testimony, I think we ended up, you kind of finished up telling us what you did with Krueger. And then what happened after your time with Krueger? What happened to that?
My very final mission with Krueger was in Syria. And again, we were retrieving Mobius tech. So basically the story that I've been told, and I remember part of it in my recalls, was that I lost my leg in that mission. And for a clone, that's not a big deal. Typically, they would just send you into the lab, they'd have it rebuilt, and then you go back to doing your job, whatever that is. Well, in this particular mission, what happened was that we essentially stumbled into the middle of a firefight between the Syrians and the Americans.
Oh.
Or I should say NATO forces, but it's primarily U.S. Army Rangers. And the same guy that I told you about, this John Lynch, was there with the U.S. Army Rangers, giving them direct, like intelligence and actionable intelligence stuff, right?
Yeah.
And if you can imagine being on a battlefield as a soldier, right? And here you are thinking that you're the best trained of the U.S. military, the U.S. Army Rangers, and you're shooting the Syrians, you're trying to defend yourselves, and out of nowhere you see this hole in the sky open up, and 15 guys essentially that are in super upgraded body armor and super upgraded weaponry drops out of the sky via DLI into the ground. That would make most soldiers crap their pants. And that was pretty much the response, because everybody stopped shooting when they saw it happen.
And who was that group?
That was my group.
Oh, that was your group. Okay. And then what happened after that? Yeah.
We were in an urban environment, and most of the guys shifted to the right and were trying to go around some buildings. my fire team was trying to provide support for them to give them cover to do that. And all of a sudden, the Syrians started opening up on our position. Well, Peter the Insider and two of our other guys ran out of ammo, and I tried to give them time to get in cover to get ammo. And this is the story where I was telling you about the light shield that I popped up. And
oh yeah.
Peter joked with me. He said that was both the coolest thing to ever see and the dumbest thing to ever do on a battlefield, all at the exact same time. And I'm like, why? He goes, because you basically showed Terran soldiers that there's people that have abilities they don't have.
Now, so this battle took place here on Earth, just to clarify.
In Syria, yes. Our equipment, our waypoint device on our wrist, we knew Mobius tech was in the area. We're trying to look for it. And we got caught right in the middle of this battle trying to find this stupid Mobius tech. And when I put the shield up, they had ran for cover. Everyone's firing at me. I'm actually watching the shells hit the light shield and hitting the ground. The kinetic energy from the shell hitting is forcing me, kind of vibrating me backwards. You can see your feet kind of doing this as it's moving you back. And in training, we called that leaning in. You lean in against the force using the light shield. And essentially, you don't ever fall because the kinetic energy hitting the shield is holding you up. And the actual motion of the shell is actually scooting you backwards. So you're never actually falling in any direction. So here I am doing this. And Peter finally yells at me. He says, "You need to get to cover now." So I dropped the light shield and I basically Krueger ran over to that location. Mm-hmm. And Super Soldier ran over there. And at the end of that mission, this CIA attaché was pissed that we were there trying to retrieve the tech he wanted. And our vehicle got hit. I lost my leg. I wake up in this tube. And essentially, there's an egghead there who's trying to do their stuff, trying to rebuild my leg. I'm actually looking down with my mask on. And there's these femtotech devices actually rebuilding my entire leg from scratch. So I'm watching the bone, the tissues, all the cartilage, the arteries, everything getting rebuilt. Pretty creepy, to be blunt. But I watched it happen. And I tried to get out of the tube at one point. And the doctor's like, "Don't do that. Just wait until you're done," right? So when I got done, I was sitting on this table and they had this guy come in as a suit. And basically he comes in, he's from JDFC. And he's talking directly to Gabriel Krueger. And Gabriel came in and basically he said, "We're going to transfer 10 assets from our group to this MDF group." And I got chosen to go to MDF. Gabriel's like, "Your time with Krueger is done." He's actually talking, looking me right in the face. He goes, "But I want you to remember one thing is once you're a Krueger, you're always a Krueger."
Interesting.
So I got transferred to MDF at that point. I got put back into my 1.0 body. I was told by Peter, I was told the clones were destroyed.
1.0 body, what is that? Your original body? That body,
yeah,
okay.
Body. Yeah. I got sent to Mars to do training there again. And when we got there, MDF, they had think about this, right? So I've been through all this stuff with, Super Soldier training, MK Ultra, and Krueger. I get to Mars, and they put me basically right back in boot camp again. So I'm kind of like, what in the hell is this?
In your original body. How did it feel being back in your original body? Did it take getting used to, or was it just natural?
Well, the altar had to adjust to a genetically inferior body. Because the bodies we currently have are genetically manipulated by other ET species. Our genetics are kind of muddied. The clone bodies have been cleaned up. They have no genetic defects whatsoever in them.
Okay.
So when you're trying to channel psychic energy through that, it doesn't hurt that body necessarily. This body can cause damage, which is why typically regen tanks and hollow med beds and that kind of stuff are being used.
Yeah.
But at this point, I went through all of that. What I didn't realize was on one of our missions, I looked up and we saw this large ship jump in. It's a triangular ship, looked like a Corellian cruiser from Star Wars. We actually heard the shockwave of the ship jumping into the gravitational area around Mars. And I look up and I'm seeing the ship, and this little bright glint comes out of the ship and heads right down to Ares Prime. And the guy who was our lieutenant basically told us, he goes, "Don't ever trust those freaking German bastards because they're fucking crazy." And I was like, who? Who's he talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I continued doing missions for them. We did training for them. What I didn't realize is our whole group, our whole company, even some of the parts of our battalion were being screened for potential NWR deployment. Now, what we got told is this. They said in our training battalion, they said, if you guys actually make it, you'll be assigned to an actual active company, first and foremost. Well, at the end of my time with MDF, everybody in my group had been assigned to a company, but they hadn't been moved yet, right? There's 3 of us that did not get moved. Me, my A gunner, and another guy in my fire team. We were the 3 guys who did not get moved. And we all get called up in front of the command. And at this point, I was a 02, I think, first lieutenant. And this guy that I'm calling the old man was in the room yelling at this captain. And basically, he decided to go ahead and make a personnel change by taking me and these other 2 gentlemen into Nakwa from Niger.
Which is Dark Fleet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at that point, he comes out and he goes, okay, are you ready to be an actual part of the real dark tip of the spear? I said, well, I thought that's what we were doing. He's like, no. He goes, you don't even understand. I said, well, yeah, if you're giving me the option of going somewhere instead of being blank slated, yes, I will take that option. And we were all taken off Mars up to this ship, which was the USS Patton I talk about, the Patton, yeah. George Patton. And at that point, that's where my journey with Dark Fleet began. It was there. I actually started off as a security officer, and I was head of a special operations group within Dark Fleet. And my group essentially did everything that nobody else wanted to do. So we have this high security prison that we need you to bust into, grab this person, and make them magically disappear back onto our ship without those guys being able to follow us.
So Dark Fleet is, from what I understood, it's a negative group. Or do we misunderstand that?
So here's what I will say, and this I actually put this in my writings actually when it came out in the PHR thing. It's really easy for people who've never been a part of a unit. It's easy for them to criticize it and say, well, this is what they do and they've never been in there. It's kind of like blaming somebody who never responds. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you have a group of people that they're constantly being blamed, it's like everybody wants to blame the Masons for everything. They want to blame the Illuminati for everything instead of accepting responsibility for the dumb shit they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
And this to me is kind of the same thing. Now, I would say this. CG was correct when he said that these guys coming into a room were very quiet. They do not talk unless spoken to. And they do have this kind of air of superiority. Well, the reason why is because we were constantly told, if any other programs find out what you do, there is potential legal issues behind this because of what we're neck deep in the middle of. So we had a do not talk, do not ask policy about anything, especially my unit. So we just didn't talk about it. We never let them know what we were doing. They had no access to our databases until recently. ACIO and the old man made a copy of that database, which was given to Sigmund, which is how Corey and his group now have it. But the idea is that that's starting part of the disclosure process. They want people to know who was involved and who wasn't involved.
Yeah.
But the bigger picture of this too, by the way, is that, again, like I said, it's really easy for people to make statements about a group who would never respond.
Sure.
Unfortunately, Corey's done that in that case. He's never part of Dark Fleet.
I thought the reptilians were somehow connected to Dark Fleet. Is that accurate? So
here's the way it breaks down, right? So 95% of the species we deal with are very nice. They're very positively aligned.
Yeah.
A lot of them are reptilian. The Draco are reptilians. But not all reptilians are Draco.
Negative faction of, yeah.
Yes.
But you said not all reptilians are Draco. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Correct, yes. So the reason why I'm making that definitive statement is because of the bloodline and where those particular reptilians started. 3 specific species all started on this planet. The Draco, the Zeta Reticulans, and us. They were all created here by different groups trying to create either slave races or have them work as administrators over the slave races that were here.
The two groups that have been taking me at night.
Yeah.
Now, the bloodline that comes from the Draco that started here, this is where you hear that phrase Sakar. That's the original genetic bloodline.
Alex Collier talks about, Sakar. Yeah.
That's the original genetic reptilian Draco bloodline of the White Royals and the Queen that came from this planet, from their Eden, from here to elsewhere. And we didn't start here, by the way, just so we're clear. We were actually planted here by the Lyrans when they came here. We were genetically crafted, created, and then manipulated later on. But the side effect, I think Alex Collier even talks about that even to a certain degree.
He does, yeah.
But the idea is that the Draco started here. This was their home planet, right? When they left their Eden, they went to Thuban, which is where the Draco Empire sprouted up and became what it is today. Now, when I said earlier, 95% of these races are positive. They're very good. They like being around us. They want trade. They enjoy talking to humans. Yes, some of them do enjoy human delicacies. And they do enjoy trading slaves for technology, genetic material for technology. We actually are one of the few races that can reverse engineer technology, which is where we come into play in the big picture of things. Everybody brings their shit here because they know that we can reverse engineer it and make it better.
I mean, I've heard like we're great engineers. Humans are great engineers. Yeah.
Because of how we think. We're not locked into a particular hive mind or group think like some of these other species are. That's the problem they have. They don't have any creative abilities. We do. And that's what makes us really, really good at what we do. So that's why when anyone talks about this idea of giving up our individuality, i.e. transhumanism or the black goo, I get really like twitchy because I'm kind of like, no, we're giving up the one thing that makes us special in the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we're fighting against that agenda.
Correct.
Right? So there are reptilians within Dark Fleet. So were you working alongside them?
When I first came aboard the Patton, yes. We had Draco aboard the ship as liaisons and as advisors. Even when I went to the Franklin, when we first got there, when I took over the Franklin, we had liaisons and advisors aboard the ship. But here's the thing, right? So one of the rules that's basically stipulated to Dark Fleet captains like I was is his captain's prerogative on how his ship is ran, right? Well, guess what? My first prerogative was get those freaking lizard motherfuckers off my ship. I didn't want them there.
Yeah.
Nope. Goodbye. I'm doing black operations. I don't want you aboard my ship. Unless you're Terran, don't come here.
Wasn't there some other type of like sexual misconduct taking place on the ship?
There was on the Patton and on the Franklin both. When I had seen it as a security officer and as an MIO when I was working aboard the Patton, but I wasn't in a position to say anything. It wasn't until the old man made me XO that I said, well, is this now something I am permitted to actually deal with? He's like, well, yeah, you're the XO of the ship. And I said, good. And one of the very first things I did was there was a gentleman who had been repeatedly raping some of the female officers on board the ship, and I airlocked his ass. I put 2 bullets in his brain pan, shoved him out the airlock. I told 2 guys to go retrieve his body and blank slate him, send him back to the moon.
Wow.
That's called formal retirement, by the way, in Dark Fleet.
Former retirement?
Formal retirement.
Formal retirement.
Yeah, he's done.
Wow. So then when he goes back to the moon, is he just a slave? Or
no, they blank slate him and send him back to the Earth. Or they send him to a slave colony if he's not Terran, yes.
Interesting. Wow, this is fascinating. Even the part where you talk about the hole opening up in the sky and guys dropping out. We've seen that in movies. I was just watching, because I couldn't sleep the other night, the worst movie in the world, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. But the hole opens up in the sky and these warriors drop out and they start in the middle of a battlefield. That's the first thing I thought of when you said that.
So a good movie to see kind of what we're talking about, that sort of is, I would call it hard disclosure, would be Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat with Tom Cruise. The craft they used to drop those guys and the exoskeletons out of the ship is exactly how a Tier 3 works.
Really?
Yep, it's exactly how it works.
So did you, okay, in your time in Darkfleet, how did you get out of Darkfleet? What happened?
I didn't leave Darkfleet. We actually defected out of Darkfleet.
Okay.
So what ended up happening was the Draco essentially had went to the Triumvirate. They basically
the Triumvirate's like the control board?
Yeah, the Super Board, yes. The ICC Super Board.
Yeah.
They had backdoored Darkfleet by going directly to the Triumvirate saying, these guys, their ambassadors, said either you accept these terms or we're going to start renegotiating a bunch of crap. So essentially, the old man was directed by the board, these are your choices. Darkfleet can accept the idea that slavery will still be considered being doable, and all of your officer corps will accept black goo, placement inside their bodies, or we have to make other choices. And here's the thing that I keep telling people. The old man trained me and others to basically think, if you're going into a combat scenario, you never go into that combat scenario without being 3 to 5 moves ahead of your enemy. Never. Yeah. Up to this point in this decision-making tree, what the board didn't realize was these people who are forming the alliance, and this lady Felicity, had been talking with me and the old man a lot. And the old man basically said, I have 20% of the fleet already under my control. If I defect, these people are all coming with me. And they were all aboard capital ships and all the way down to like my ship, which is like a Corvette frigate-sized ship. And when he gave the command, that whole group of people basically left Darkfleet. We all jumped out and went to this predetermined location. We met with Felicity's group, and essentially we formed what we would call today the Alliance.
So that's amazing.
That is amazing.
That's a great story. So the Alliance is just kind of like a breakaway of
the hodgepodge of a bunch of different groups.
Okay.
The old Solar Warden faction, there's groups from there. You have groups that are part of Radiant Glory and Radiant Guardian who also came into Alliance. You have groups from like JDFC who are part of Alliance. You have groups that came in from like us that were all Nakwafen that came into Alliance. But essentially, this group, their primary motivator was threefold. One, we had to protect Terra and the Terran system at all costs. Otherwise, the species that's here will never have a chance to fully get out into space and have a way to make sure it has survivability, right?
Sure.
Secondly, we will not allow black goo inside our solar system. If we find it, we destroy it.
Good.
We found multiple methods of that. The third one was the whole slavery subject, which still gets me pretty worked up because that's something that even when I was in Nakwafen before we defected out, I had problems with it. That's one of the reasons why I believe the old man chose me to put me into command positions, because he also had a problem with it, but he wasn't in a position yet to actually do anything about it. So he was already picking officers who, again, 3 to 5 moves out, he could put these officers in command positions, and he knew that if he put them there, they were the same mindset he was.
Okay, so so the Alliance, what role are they playing right now as far as what we're seeing taking place on the planet? So
you could kind of say the Alliance works alongside Space Force. They're not the same unit.
Okay.
Space Force is going to be, in my opinion, especially if this white hat general who's in charge of it stays there, they're going to be the people who we see initial disclosure here on Earth from. The way it's going to start out will be through power systems, meaning they'll have like fusion reactors and other stuff that comes down to Earth that's workable. The second thing you're going to see is med tech. They've already got that started, by the way. If you look at some of the stuff that Elka and I did on one of her videos.
The Foxconn stuff?
Foxconn and some of the other companies now, they're producing actual proton bed and med bed technologies already here on Earth. They've already seeded that technology and it's already being put out, being used to stop cancer. It's not a true med bed, but it's kind of getting in that vein, right?
Sure.
The other thing I would say is that the third thing you're going to see show up is improvements in terms of how we use technology down here. For example, using more hover technology, using more airborne technology, using less roadway technology, the way we produce food, the way we grow food. All these things will start showing up, and we'll be like, where did this technology come from? Well, it came from up there.
Sure.
They've been growing food up there for decades. So
they grow it and use replicators, I guess, just depending on what ship you're on.
Depends on the type of food, and it depends on what the food is being used for. Replicators is used primarily for mainstay food supplements. Grown material is used to offset for nutrients that are not found inside of replicators.
Okay.
So, for example, imagine how like a macronutrient food like spinach. Spinach would get used to supplement some of the nutrients not found in the actual replicator stuff.
Interesting. So you talked about the med beds. I think there was a location, was it California, where Trump was a picture of Trump in the room with that bed. That's like the first version of the med bed, the cancer curing one.
Yes, the 0.1 rev of that, the alpha version of that med bed, yes. Foxconn built, their medical group built it. They have another company who they sold, they're licensing that patent to. And that company went and actually manufactured the whole med bed out, and they tested it. And they found out that what the med bed really does is it actually looks for a certain cellular resonance that's not yours, i.e. it's cancerous. And it fires a proton beam at that cancer cell, destroying the cancer cell without even using any sort of knives or invasive technology.
Nice. And that's probably used for what? Elites, celebrities, people who can afford it right now. It's obviously not publicly available.
But this is exactly why Trump originally put out that notice where he said, I want all this he put like 10 categories of technology. He said, I want all of this declassified now. And it's also the reason why the CIA about crapped their pants when it happened, because they're like, we can't release all this stuff right now.
I remember that. Yeah. Well, he wanted all the patents, like so many patents to be released and all kinds of stuff because they're all tied up and they don't go anywhere.
Well, what happened was this is where you see all these patents being found on Google patent search now.
Yeah.
Google being who they are, they dumped all the patents into the patent office, the U.S. patent office. And all of a sudden, here's Google like, oh, we found all these patents for you. And everyone's like, what the hell? Why is there a TR3 patent in there? The TR3s don't exist.
The Salvatore Pais TR3B.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them, and there's been a lot of speculation around those patents because people are wondering why they're so publicly available. Or maybe some of them look like they're incomplete too.
But here's the reason why it happened, right? So originally, those patents were part of what the U.S. Patent Office called it was a secure / clearance level patent, right, by the U.S. military or by an intelligence organization. Google doesn't care where it came from. So they just lump some of the patents all in their search.
Interesting.
Hooray for Google, right?
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden it's like they don't care where it came from, but here it is.
Yeah. Well, they probably figure, for one, nobody heard about it, nobody knew about it. So if you're not searching it, you're not going to find it.
Right.
It just kind of slipped in under the radar
until David Wilcock talks about it and gets it.
Well, some of them. But I mean, there's probably other ones. And I know this for a fact. You can't go to Google Patents and type in TR3B, even though that is the patent, TR3B. You need to type in the actual patent number. If you don't have the number, you can't search it. I've tried this because I was arguing with somebody. I was like, no, the patent's there. He's like, I don't see it. And then I was like, oh shit, it's not there. But then I realized you have to type in the exact patent number. You have to have that number to pull it up.
Yes.
Or a link that takes you directly to that page. So it's not that easy.
Yeah, or if you have a copy of the PDF, you can go look at that number again and actually pull it up inside their search system.
Okay. Yeah. You said one time there's a picture of Trump signing a bill for Space Command or something, and there's two people next to him that are Lyran commanders.
Well, one was Lyran, one was Palladian, but yes.
Okay, I have seen that picture. They look human.
Well, they're supposed to look human.
Sure. Can you explain to people how you knew they were Lyran and Palladian?
So this is kind of convoluted story, but I'll try to go through it quickly. So where the picture came from was a friend of mine. He works for Secret Service, and he posts stuff sometimes on his social media feed about stuff that he takes while he's with the president, right? Well, this particular picture, he had put it up on his social media feed because it was kind of a significant bill that was being signed with Space Force, right?
Yeah.
But he sent me a picture, and he sends me this picture. He goes, "Do you know who these two people are staying immediately to the left of the president?" He goes, "You're right, his left." And I look at it and I said, "Well, the female standing there, she's a Lyran commander. The other guy I think's Palladian." He goes, "That's exactly what this other guy talking to me said." And the reason why I knew this is because we as Dark Fleet sometimes would go in and work with some of these other species. We negotiate with them. We do exchanges with them. The Merchant Marine fleet we had through the ICC would be there doing the exact same stuff, doing exchanges and trades and stuff. But the idea is that we would see some of these beings there, and energy-wise and psychically, you'd pick up on exactly who they are. You know when you got around them. Their energy felt very different. They looked human, but psychically they felt very, very different.
So do you think Trump was aware that these are ETs, or does he think they're humans?
He thinks they're humans.
Okay, interesting. So I wonder how many people within the administration and in politics in general and the government are ETs then?
Almost every major government on this planet uses off-world security at this point.
Well,
with the exception of the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Just like that extremely tall guy that we see walking around with Trump, everybody is speculating that he's an ET. Is that possible?
Yes.
Any idea what race or where he's from, or you just know he's off-world?
I haven't seen a close-up picture of him yet, but I would speculate probably yes. He is probably a off-world person.
Yeah, just walking among us. I just think that's fascinating. You said that the Super Board has been taken over by a white hat. And a lot of these companies that were operating from the Super Board jumped ship because they realized that their game was over.
Correct.
So what company is left? What does that mean for that same white hat is the guy who's in charge of Space Force, correct?
Yes, he is. So the easiest way to answer that question is this. All these corporations with negative influence on humanity,
yeah,
they're the ones that all jumped ship or wanted nothing to do with Space Force or the Super Board at that point. Specifically, Monarch and Mobius were the two first to go because they were like, nope, I'm not going to have some do-gooder telling me what to do, right?
Well, yeah.
Umbrella was probably the hardest one to figure out whether they were going to do anything or not because they're actually motivated primarily by profit. So if you're let's say that you're somebody who is a general and you're part of a company who's manufacturing, bioweapons, your profit still may be there regardless of whether or not someone who's a white hat's in charge or not. So, and eventually I think what happened was Umbrella eventually left the Super Board because this whole talk about, using Mobius tech, limiting cloning, limiting slave trade, all that stuff came up and they were like, no. You're actually now impacting our bottom line. And they left.
Do you think one of the sole reasons for Space Force to become public and to do what it's doing is to stop off-world trafficking?
I think it's one of the initial steps will happen. Once they get their head around what is actually going on, and what I mean by that is this general who's the white hat, he has to understand what the full scope of what's going on in these programs really is. And I don't think he even knows yet. Now, there may be people in Alliance telling him what's going on.
Yeah.
But hearing something, it's kind of like us having this talk right now, right? You guys are hearing what I used to do when I was in the programs. But unless you've actually been through it and you know what that actually means, it's a completely different level of understanding and awareness.
Yeah, I fully understand that. Yeah.
And that's exactly how I think this general feels. I think he now has a mechanical knowledge of what's going on, but he hasn't actually worked with people who know what's going on.
Yeah, that's like I was in construction, and we would have these engineers come out and these architects, and they would design stuff that actually physically couldn't be built, and we have to send it back. Like, you don't understand. You can't get the tool in there to do this. They only have school training. They don't have on-the-job training. So they're designing stuff. Oh, that works, but it doesn't work. So it's the same concept. He just doesn't have an understanding of what's going on.
Well, I think there are people on his team now who were part of this ICC Super Board, the triumvirate, who are now helping this white hat understand what's going on. But I think the bigger picture of this is they also know some of these other groups, these more negatively aligned groups like Monarch, Mobius, Umbrella, they realize that if this goes the way it probably will go, they could face crimes against humanity charges at some point.
Yeah.
With the International Criminal Court, and that's the bigger issue.
Which with the rest of the Earth-based cabal, will be happening. Yeah,
there will be people who are political elites here in this country that people will not understand why they're being charged. These people that everyone looks up to, and they're like, "Oh my God, these people are so awesome!" And all of a sudden, they're getting charged for crimes against humanity. And what these people don't realize is these particular individuals enabled these corporations to do what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They signed bills, they signed executive orders, they signed documentation saying, "Yep, this is okay."
Now, speaking of these people being charged, you ran into the Clintons on the moon one time, correct? How did that encounter?
Yeah, I was in Krueger at the time.
How did that? What happened?
The way it actually happened. Well, the way it happened for me was, and by the way, I've had 3 other people confirm this story. Okay, at least 3 others. You guys may know who Will Glover is. He's done a bunch of interviews about SSP stuff. And Ted, of course, he also has too. They both independently confirmed what actually happened in this, and so did Peter. So we're all standing. Basically what happened was we had this big dog and pony show. All these folks from Earth, these elites, they felt they were still on Earth up to a point. So the way it worked was they brought them through a gate system that brought them right into where the Krueger offices was. We're all standing out in front of this area. Remember I told you about the white tile with the red carpet on the outside?
Yeah.
So on that red carpeting area.
Oh, hang on a sec. You froze up for a second. On that red carpeting, what happened?
Well, if you look at that hallway, there's a section of white tiles with red carpet on the outside. And there is these purple cordons that we set up to separate the Krueger folks from the people who are doing the viewing, right?
Okay.
And what ended up happening is that you had the guys on one side, the females on the other, right? And essentially we were showing these VIPs that were coming through, these are the security assets we can use to help you guys out, right?
Yeah.
And as they were going through, the Clintons, and what I didn't realize was Ted did not realize he was standing right next to me during this experience. Okay, because as we're sitting there talking, I started saying this, and he went, "Oh yeah, she did this, right?" So we'll get to that in just a second. So here I'm standing at the very end of this line. Ted's standing right next to me. Peter's standing 2 people down from Ted, and Will's standing all the way down near Commander Aguma to my right. And they're all watching this happen. So the Clintons are Bill Clinton's looking right at Ted, and they're talking about, how these super soldiers are built, what they can do. Well, I think Hillary thought she was being cute, and she walked right up and grabbed me by the cod piece of my armor. And she goes, "Are these men fully functional?" And she kind of winked at me, and then she looked over at Commander Aguma. I happened to glance down at Commander Aguma, and he's doing this whole shut it down, because he knew I might react.
Yeah.
And he says, "Yes, they're fully functional." And and Hillary Clinton kind of let go, and they kind of continued their walk. And they basically walked into this large, amphitheater-sized room that has a viewing window to the outside of the complex. And they brought us in. They had us standing on one side of the room. All these VIPs were on the other side of the room. They're kind of watching out this window. And I remember hearing Bill Clinton say, "Well, where's all this money that we spent?" And they had a ship come right by the window. This massive ship moved right by the window. You could see people inside the actual viewing areas in the ship. And all of a sudden, all these people were like, "Oh, what the?" And they were completely shocked by the size of this thing. Right?
Really?
So at that point, And the other thing too is that I think some of these VIPs knew that we were psychic, that we, the super soldiers, had psychic abilities.
Yeah.
And that really wigged them out really, really bad because they knew that we could get into their head and figure out national security issues. And that really bothered them really, really bad.
So is there securities against that happening? That a psychic wouldn't be able to figure something out like that?
If there is, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. How large was that ship that came by the window? Just
it was a frigate, a small frigate.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so if you look at the scale of ships, right? Let me see if I can find this picture really fast. I may have another picture here somewhere if I can find it. Apologies, it's taking so long. I'm just trying to.
Oh, you're good, man.
I can show this picture really fast if I can to give you guys a scale reference on how this looked.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Okay, yeah, here we go. So, all right, here we go. So, ironically, this is taken from a model that was actually sold here on Earth, believe it or not. I've yet to find out where it came from, but this is actually the larger ship in this picture would be the Patton.
Okay.
That ship's about 20 miles long.
Wow, it's basically a Star Destroyer.
And this smaller ship here would be about the size of the Franklin.
And
so you're looking at 1 to 5 miles long, somewhere in that range.
That's still massive compared to for what we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, that looked exactly like Star Wars, Star Destroyer. I mean, so that's pretty fascinating.
A frigate, by the way, is smaller than the Franklin.
Okay.
So it's maybe 2/3 the size of the Franklin. So you're looking at something that's in the range of like 1 mile to 3 miles in length. And that's what went by that window.
Yeah, but that's still impressive if you've never seen anything like that.
Yep.
Are a lot of these ships built on Earth? And then I've heard some are.
There was an initial fleet that was built for Solar Warden on Earth in the Wasatch Mountains.
Was that the submarine ships or
no? This was the actual cruisers used by Solar Warden.
Okay.
The subs used by Nakwafen actually were built on Earth as subs and then converted later on to get them off planet.
Sure. Yeah.
So because they could be sealed. But yes,
it made sense. Yeah,
they were converted later on. These ships that we're talking about here were actually built either on Mars or at New Corellia, New Earth or Corellia.
Where's that located?
There's a planetary system that is actually. I've actually talked about this with Ted. Actually, let me see if I've got it marked.
So this new Corellia, New Earth, what's going on there?
So this planet is essentially it's a super Earth, 4 times Earth's gravity. Basically, when you or I would go down there, we'd have to take pills in order to offset the gravity effects to our body. It'd still be pretty painful to walk around, so you're still usually in either an armor or an exosuit until you get adjusted. And I was trying to find out what the actual designator. I wrote it down at one point from what Connie had told me. And the ironic thing is that designator has been found in the exoplanet search.
So, oh, really? So it's actually an astronomer could locate it if they wanted to.
Yeah, they could tell you exactly where it is. Okay, so let's see here.
I mean, are there people like living there? Is there civilization there? Or is this like what's happening there?
I'm looking. Just 1 second here. So the system that is actually used for that planetary system. It's called Kepler 452b. And we actually have a couple of names for it: New Earth, Corellia, or what some people are jokingly calling Coruscant, because of the Star Wars reference. This location is Kepler 452b. And so essentially the way that planetary system works is there are 7 major spires coming off the planet. Those 7 spires go outside the actual atmosphere of the planet. They go up to these docking stations, and some of them are armed and armored. Some of them are not. Dark Fleet is the only group that uses Spire 3 because it's on the opposite side of the planet. And that's done for a reason, because they don't want other folks knowing what Dark Fleet do and what they have. So you have groups like Radiant Glory who do dock there. You have groups like the ICC, the Merchant Marine Fleet that comes out there. They do slave exchanges. They do all kinds of stuff out there. But that is what they call the Alpha Site. If something were to happen to Earth, that's where all the elites, all of these high-end people will be transferred to.
Oh, so they really do have a new Earth ready.
Yes.
That's interesting.
They have a whole range of mountains that these DUMBs, these deep underground military bases, have been built under. And they also have some cities on the surface that are like just above surface. They have all these facilities just around the spires. So if somebody wants to get a drink, if they want to go to a hotel, if they want to get other services, they can actually find it there.
Wow. So it's all set up. And there's people there now, I'm sure, living there as well. It's not just...
There's generations that have been born there.
Really?
Yeah.
And then do they know about our planet?
Yes, they do.
And they haven't been told it's been destroyed? No.
No. The history there has not been revised as it has been for some of the German colonies.
Wow. God, there's got to be so much misinformation out there. I mean, and this is only from your perspective, what you've seen. Imagine all the other people who have their own experiences in other places that you might not even know about.
Correct.
Where did you run into Corey in the programs?
I only saw Mr. Goode once and once only.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why I woke up to where I am now and decided to come out to talk about it since I woke up, basically. The memory that Connie had brought forth out of me basically said at one point we had a catastrophic communications systems failure aboard the Patton because they installed some new technology and it was crap. And what ended up happening was on every ship, when you go through what's called intuitive empathic training on Mars, there's basically 3 levels of that training. The first is what they call just a standard intuitive empath. The second level is called interfacer, which is what Corey did a lot of. That's what he's been trained to do. The third group is what we call astropathics. Now, what astropathics does, you can literally project and receive thoughts from planet to planet or from system to system.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I had. I've been trained that way. So, and also you're also synced to an individual who's on the LOC. So if something happens, you can sync right into that person's thought pattern and say, hey, we have an emergency here. We need to do something about this. And there's usually 4 to 5 people aboard every ship that have that ability. They are considered the communications fail-safe back to the LOC.
And then so where did you encounter Corey then? I'm just curious to see where this lines up.
So what ended up happening is that when the communication systems failed, the old man grabbed me. He said, hey, you've got this level of training. I need you to send a message to the LOC to tell them we need help from any ship in the area that can bring new communications gear and replace it, right? I sent the message. I got a message back saying you need to jump into the North Polar orbit above Jupiter. And when you get to this area, punch into this area. It's a pocket dimension. You have to punch in a certain way. I told the old man this stuff. We did it. And what it was an ambassadorial site that was being used by many of the programs there. we were in orbit around this ambassadorial floating structure, and that's when the Helenquator jumped in the system. Now, understand this, because everyone misunderstands this. Corey he was never part of Dark Fleet. At this point, he was part of Solar Warden. Okay. What happened is that he comes across in a shuttle, a DART, with these 3 other gentlemen. I'm a security officer at this point. My job is to basically escort him and these other 3 guys to all 8 locations where these communication boxes are. They pull out the box. They pull out this little, what they call a QEC chip, the Quantum Entanglement Communications chip. It's paired back to the LOC. They pull it out, put the new communications module in, put the chip in the new communications device. The old communication device is put back in a case and taken off the ship. Simple as that.
Wow.
And the whole time I'm seeing this guy, I'm listening to him talk to his teammates, and I'm watching all of these guys with 3 of my guys. And basically our job was to make sure he didn't look around at all. His job was to make sure he stayed focused on doing his job.
Really?
And ironically, in 2015, 2016, when Gaiam first put out Cosmic Disclosure, everybody that I knew was talking about this show. They were like, "Oh my God, this show's so awesome! It's like real life Star Trek." Blah blah blah.
I was watching it back then.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll go check this out, right? So I went to turn on episode 1, and all of a sudden I see this guy sitting on the TV who is a part of this 4-man team that I escorted around our ship. I literally had to pause the video because I didn't know if I was going to throw up or have diarrhea or both.
Wow. It just hit you like that.
As a trigger, and all this stuff that Connie had said in these papers at that point I realized were probably real.
Wow.
The gravity of that hit me like that. And I went to the bathroom. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing? Am I throwing up? Am I going to have diarrhea? Am I going to do both? I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
Right? I prayed to Ralph, the Great White Throne God, for a little bit. And when I finally got my shit straightened up, I walked out and just turned the TV off. I couldn't watch it. It took me 2 or 3 days to finally get back to actually watching that first episode. But the minute I heard him talk, I'm like, holy shit, this has got to be the same dude.
Yeah.
He looks the same. He sounds the same voice, same mannerisms. What the fuck, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this has got to be the same guy. Has to be. And listening to him talk about what his duties were aboard the ship, he was a technical crew member aboard the Helenquator, which fits exactly what you would send over to our ship to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
So it really shocked me. I was like, okay, so this means that what I was told by Connie was probably the truth and probably real.
Yeah. Wow. So that was fairly recently that all these memories came flooding back, which is impressive because when you're talking, this is a lifetime of memories.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so it shocked me because I didn't realize that I thought all this stuff that Connie had channeled was kind of like, or she had gotten out of me, and she did the PHR session, she'd been writing down.
Yeah. I
thought a lot of it was kind of like, But there were certain things that kind of stuck out in those messages, right? So one of them was the German being used. She actually went to one of the schools I went to, college-wise. It was close. And she talked to a linguistics professor there. And one of the very first times that I spoke to her when she brought me under PHR, the Pacific Knock Aggression, I actually was speaking to her in German. For the record, wow. I've never been taught German, and I don't speak German. That was my alter telling her what was going on.
Wow.
Johan was telling her what was actually happening.
That's fascinating.
And the screwed up part is this. Well, the screwed up part of it is this, right? So she takes this written document that has this whole story on it to this linguistics professor. He's a avid like history buff, and especially on World War II, and especially he's a German. He's a very high level specialist in the German field, speaking the German language. He looked at it and he said, "What book did you get this out of?" And Connie kind of gives him this really screwed up look, and she's like, "What do you mean? What book did I get this out of?" Because that particular dialect has been dead since 1942, 1943.
Really?
Because when Third Army rolled through Germany, they wiped out that whole area around Düren. It's gone. Southwestern Germany, where that dialect came from, is gone. That dialect died during that situation.
So how did?
So,
well, I'm just curious.
Here's the thing, right? So
go ahead.
that dialect, it's been dead since 1943-ish. People in Germany do not speak it anymore. And here you have a live person in the middle of a post-hypnotic regression session speaking a language that hasn't been spoken since 1943.
Which would mean that those Germans made it off world, and you learned that language somewhere in the programs.
Yep. I was downloaded that.
It was downloaded.
I was downloaded that version of German. Yeah.
Sure. And then you still don't. But when you try and listen to German now, there's nothing, you don't understand it or anything.
Nope. I've actually tried to learn German to see if I could unlock other stuff. And every time I've tried to do it, I get super bad headaches. I don't know what it is about that, but it gives me really, really bad, almost like migraine type headaches.
Wonder if it's some type of, or what do they call it? A block, but it's not a block. There's a word for it.
It's a trigger, like some sort of trigger.
Yeah, that stops you from remembering it.
Tony was talking to us about that.
Yeah, I forgot.
They'll implant those, and
yeah, he used a word for it, but yeah. And then you talk about you used to create an anchor point to be able to remember.
So that was something I learned as MIO. So as military intelligence officer, I've said this before, my clearance was the same as the captain of the ship. We're the two highest cleared people on board the Pat at the time. Okay. I knew everything he knew in terms of like communications and who was doing what. Because my job was to essentially reprogram assets and give them upgrades, downgrade them, blank slate them, whatever. That was my job. So one of the things that I learned was that, especially when it comes to trying to like recall memories or like have some way of getting past the programming, you have to create what's called a pain anchored center in the mind. It's outside that pocket of that particular altar. And that's where that pain anchor you talked about with my nails digging into the palms of my hands, that's where that came into play.
So you would create pain for yourself to block the program or to
block the blank slating, yes.
Yeah, okay. But you didn't even, but at the time, that's so crazy that you knew, you were self-aware enough at the time to know to do that. That's just interesting to me how that.
Well, there are other people who have had similar experiences. For example, like they get an injection, say in the neck. The pain injection at the neck point created the pain anchor, which is why all of a sudden they started having a recall elsewhere. Now look at Corey's testimony. That's exactly what happened to him, right? This is why he started getting some of the recall he had. There are other people that have had, for example, injections in their arm or leg. They're doing some of these blank slating processes, and they do the injection before they start doing the actual psychic work. And all of a sudden, they start having recall.
I know that I've had injections right here. I don't know why or what it means, but something's going on. It's on a number of occasions I've had memories of that via dream state, but it's like a memory, and I wake up with that pain of something there.
It's probably a partial recall. I know a lot of people have had that. And usually, like I said, that anchor point creates the gateway by which, when you come into the here and now, if you work with someone who does QHHT or PHR or does sermonic soul retrievals, that anchor point becomes the way in which they can track that back to what actually happened. They can follow that energy back to the part in the brain where that memory resides.
Wow.
That's exactly what happened with me, was that Connie basically started focusing on that. And as she would crack that nut open a little bit, all of a sudden stuff would start coming out. All these memories would start flooding out. So,
yeah, that's incredible. So as far as like a disclosure timeline, have you been made aware of what that might look like for us as far as like first contact or med beds even? Like, I know we talked about it, but do you know, I know it's so hard to guess, but I didn't know if you were set in on any of that, or do you know?
I have heard other people have said this, including Randy Kramer. CG has said this. I have said this in the past. I will continue sticking to my guns on this because I've been told by multiple individuals 2021, 2022, post-inauguration is when you're going to start seeing some of this stuff hit the fan. Because they've been trying to figure out if this shit actually hits the fan, what do we do? Like, can we write a policy ahead of time so we already have something in place where if something happens, we can just go ahead and do it, right? And that's exactly why I think they were reaching out to like people like me and other folks in the disclosure community, because they're trying to figure out, well, you guys are experiencers, you've been there. What do we need to do? How do we need to handle this the right way, right?
Yeah.
And that's when all of a sudden I think, well, the communication with this guy started in January of last year. It's going to be something along the lines of you're going to see the medical technology. You're going to see potentially, disclosure of other ET species, Antarctica, Mars. And so it'll start trickling out. You're going to see it come out in weird ways. Space Force will come out and say, oh, look, we've established a base now on Mars, even though we've had one there since, the 40s.
Yeah, it's all, well, basically that's what they do with any technology that gets released now, like the iPhone.
Antarctica is going to be the same way. Well, what do you think an iPhone is? Seriously. This is a black glass pad right here, folks.
Yeah.
It is.
It's just not transparent.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is a simulation of the black glass pad technology already being shown right to us, and we're being accustomed to it the way we use it up there.
I mean, I've seen prototypes of the transparent, like iPhones that fold in half and all kinds of stuff.
And that's the big problem, is that you have these groups that have to have buy-in on releasing this tech that comes right out of their programs, right out of their budgets. And all of a sudden they have to release that information in a way that the U.S. population and the world sees it. You think about it. If you land a TR-3B on the front lawn of the White House, what are people going to do? There's going to be mass panic, especially when you see a human come walking out of the craft and we go, hey, look what Space Force built.
Yeah.
We've had it since 1950.
Yeah, well, I don't even when we do get disclosure, I don't think that's how it'll happen. I mean, it's going to be integrated. It has to be, because there will be panic.
But I think this is the images I'm giving you are the probable images that we're probably going to see, right?
Yeah.
You're going to see the medical technology come out first. And also the stuff that we use with our vehicles, the stuff that we use with our flying vehicles, all that stuff's going to hit first. At some point, that's when you start seeing all this discussion about Antarctica, Mars, the moon. When that stuff starts coming out, Space Force will come out with a massive statement saying, oh, hey, by the way, we've already established off-world bases. This is where they are, and this is what we're doing. And at that point, everyone's going to go, what? Mm-hmm. And what he's really saying in the fine print is that we just decided to take these facilities over and they're now under new management.
Yeah. Now, I've heard the med bed. I've heard actually on that 4-hour super soldier history. So you guys were discussing the black goo being involved with some med beds to stay away from, because there's black goo technology that's actually, if you use that med bed, it's going to affect your DNA. Is that accurate?
Well, actually, it'll affect your ability to have your own independence. So this black goo, essentially what it does, it actually works as a symbiote within whatever biological entity it takes over. The reason why the Draco love it is because they can be hive-minded with everybody else that's infected. And they can dominate other people who are infected that way.
Yeah.
So if you have a Draco advisor aboard your ship, he can then command everybody aboard that ship to do whatever it is he wants to do, because he's a stronger psychic source. Secondly, and more importantly, that hive-minded technology means your IQ jumps way up, because now you have access to all this knowledge, all these abilities, all this stuff that you as a normal asset don't normally have. And it creates security containment issues if you're someone like me who is an MIO and you specifically silo off information that does not need to be used by certain organizations or people, and all of a sudden everybody has access to that knowledge. Well, that creates a containment issue, because there's no need for them to understand what's happening with certain assets or certain people or at certain locations. So only the MIO, the XO, and the CO need to know that stuff.
Well, doesn't the black goo like basically cut off your God connection?
Yes.
But we don't want that though. I mean, that would essentially stop us from ascending spiritually.
But that's the whole idea. The Draco recognized two things, and they also have a fallacy about one thing. The fallacy is them being a fourth density species. They're the apex of evolution.
Yeah, definitely
They honestly believe they're at the apex of that, and we're like the cattle beneath them at third, almost fourth density.
Well, that's how we're treated.
But more importantly, what happens is they want to keep it that way. They want to keep that dynamic in play.
Yeah.
So they're using the black goo technology to do exactly that. And the black goo also does not want us to be alive. It's essentially an artificially created species that it is the antithesis of God. It wants to kill every biological species out there once its use has been done.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, and this is where we as a species have to make some decisions about our own evolution, our own survival, and our own procreation. Do we want this tertiary species, meaning the black goo, do we want it here, and do we want it influencing our ability to evolve? My vote is no.
Yeah,
that's why I defected.
Yeah. Well, that would just be end game for humanity. There would be no more humanity.
Yeah. Well, think about that movie I mentioned earlier, right? The whole Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat.
Yeah.
Think about the stuff that Tom Cruise's character gets into his system. That blood, it looks like black goo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at X-Files, with the guy who has the black goo in his eyes and how he behaves. That stuff completely overwrites and controls the person that it has in ways they have no intention of doing.
You're familiar with Max Spears?
Yes.
Apparently, when he died, he threw up this black goo. Is that what that is?
Yes.
That's exactly what that is.
Yep. I've actually spoken with his girlfriend, by the way. She's a very nice lady. She and James Rink were friends. When we did our show in October of last year in Vegas, she was there, and she was kind of reminiscing about him. But the idea is that you're correct. The black goo always tries to find a living symbiote system to be in that it can overtake, and then it can manipulate.
So how did the Cabal do that to him, or how did he get that in him?
Well, I think that's a matter of speculation, right? So I do know for a fact there is black goo that has came to Earth and it has been here. I've even talked about the whole Squares of Saturn technology talk we did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That falls right in line with that. You look at the actual tektite that's used for the center of the Hajj in Mecca. I've talked about that too, and the Cinnamoni stones. Those are all pieces of these squares have been launched from that system to here. So
interesting.
That black goo. So how do we know? Like, could I have it in me? Is that how do we know?
Well, here's the thing, right? So if you're making independent decisions and you're not hearing other people's thoughts, you're probably not infected.
Okay.
That's the first thing I'll say. In terms of killing it, there's only like 3 ways that I know of to actually stop it, inhibit it, or kill it. 1 is EMP. 2 is using a Faraday cage, which most people don't even understand how a Faraday cage normally works. And 3 is the gas that we actually recovered from the Lyrans. And that gas actually kills the host, but it also kills the black goo.
Wow. Did you not say in one of your interviews that there's actually a part of the solar system or the universe or somewhere there, like the black goo kind of has taken over, and you can't it's impenetrable. As soon as you enter it, it just destroys you, like vaporizes you or something?
Well, what happened, talk about the USS Galahad incident, right? So basically the ICC sent this video to every ship captain out there and asked even certain organizations to disseminate among their ship captains. Because what they had done was they had been tracking these squares that were being launched from System B, which is where they are, into System A, which is where the Earth is. It's the exact same trajectory every time. And the ICC is like, what the hell is going on? So they sent the Galahad, which made multiple jumps, 13.5 billion light years to the system. And when it jumped in, it immediately was being interrogated by this black goo, this AI nanite virus. All the communication systems started going crazy. The virus was trying to take over the ship. electronically. They turned their repulsor shields on, and that's when the black goo started launching squares at the ship. Now, the video they showed was like the last minute and a half of that. It's probably one of the most harrowing things I've ever seen.
Really?
Essentially, what you see going on in the background is these squares would hit the ship. It would actually start dissolving the actual hull, and then it would actually go after the crew, turn that biomaterial into more like black goo-based material. The captain kept broadcasting the video because he wanted people to see what he had found in real time. And they found the home system of this black goo. And here's the other thing too, right? So when we go through systems, when we jump through systems, or we're traveling through space, and Emery has actually Emery Smith's talked about this a little bit. You don't need all you need is a very specific type of scanner to tell you what frequencies are present in that system, meaning the frequencies of the species that are sentient in that system. You can tell this by doing a simple scan. Dark Fleet had a catalog, at least on my ship, I had a catalog of almost 100,000 species that were known, that were sentient, and were living in different areas of the universe.
Wow.
And this particular species, being the black goo, was cataloged, and it was marked as invasive and dangerous. So why the ICC went in there, I don't know. But they were trying to find out where it was coming from, and they did. They found the home system. And we actually had basically said no one's going to be jumping into that system anymore.
Of course not. You just wonder how something like that is even allowed to exist under the creator, right? Like, where does that come from?
Well, that comes from the idea of free will and choice, right?
Sure.
So we as sentient spiritual beings, we have a choice to decide who it is we wish to follow. And even by our own indecision, we're choosing who we're following, right? My feeling is that, I believe that divine creator is represented through this emotion of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fear is the other guy. And that is what this AI nanite virus feeds on, is that lower frequency.
Yeah.
Especially when it notices a biomass of sentient species who are vibrating in that area. Well, guess what? Earth for a long time had been in that space. So now all of a sudden we're starting to notice on our planet how the vibrational frequency is coming up, because people are starting to become aware of who they are, becoming aware of their responsibility to the earth and other people, which is raising and changing that vibrational frequency. And guess what? Some species can't live here anymore because they don't resonate with that frequency now. And this is where the whole Schumann resonance and the discussion around spiritual awareness comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the secret space program in a nutshell is governments for the last almost 100 years have made contact with extraterrestrial species and acquired technology to go off-world.
Pulling in all of the top scientists they could pull them in, put them inside a secret area inside of an aircraft company. We put this organization together, which ended up being a major organization later on studying extraterrestrial and is still studying it.
The presence of alien beings and the technology does exist. It's real as you or me, and it's a whole lot more out there than even the most diehard believers could possibly fathom.
We know that the government has recovered at least 30 extraterrestrial craft ranging in size from 20 to 30 feet to 250 feet in diameter.
Some of them are alien metals that have been produced both on this planet and the confines of outer space that are now used in all stealth aircraft. All this has come from alien technology.
The official space program was boosted by President Kennedy in his inaugural address when he mandated that the United States put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. This mandate enabled those in charge to funnel vast amounts of money into black projects and conceal the real space program from the American people.
The strands come out, but they all lead to the same center point, which is a black hole essentially, that is pulling energy from people in any way. They don't care whether you're cheering or whether you're booing, as long as you're doing it strongly. It's all ritualistically done to pull energy from the people. And then they gather that energy and use it then to manifest the false reality that we're living in.
They told me that the Earth was going to be going through some changes. Gaia was going to be moving into the higher vibrations, the higher frequencies, and only those on her who resonated with that frequency would be going with her.
They didn't expect the mother energy to return, and that's returned through all our hearts and souls. We all have that within us, and they didn't expect that we would wake up to that or that this energy would be grounded again in the earth. Creation is a love story that we are healing. We are learning to divorce the imposter and find true, authentic love within our own being. So ultimately, the war is won within ourselves.